GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask. So why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The first Ukrainian city reportedly falls to the Russians a week after the start of Putin's invasion.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 3rd of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
We're with you until 9:30 this morning, live across the whole world on your TV, radio and online. Thanks for watching.
Leading the news this morning, the city of Kherson has reportedly fallen to the Russians after a day in which Putin's forces bombed schools, hospitals and homes.
The number of people fleeing Ukraine has now topped 1 million, according to the United Nations. It is the swiftest refugee exodus of the century.
And over 6,000 people, including children, have been arrested during protests against the war in Russia, including a pensioner who survived the siege of Leningrad.
Remember, we want to hear from you. You can join in any of our reports or discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or please tweet at GB News. Well, as Isabel said, it is a week since the start of the invasion of Ukraine. Let's get the latest from our security editor, Mark White.
Well, this morning, that news, very concerning news as far as the people of Ukraine are concerned. The southern port city of Kherson, a strategically important city, which has been the scene of very intense fighting over the last few days. Reports and counterclaims that it had either fallen to the Russians or was still in Ukrainian control. Well, the latest news coming out, this is citing local officials in Kherson, is that the city is now under Russian control. There have been pictures emerging, not too many, I think, because of all of the fierce fighting and the inability to verify lots of the images, but there have been some pictures, images that have come out that show Russian forces kind of apparently gingerly working their way through the town here. The difficulty with this, of course, is just because they have actually moved in and maybe say they are in control of Kherson. Will they be able to hold it when you have a population determined to resist, and they have arms, and we know they've been supplied with the likes of shoulder-launched missiles in recent weeks. More are going into the country all of the time. Holding an urban centre like that is going to be enormously difficult. The Russian game plan is often just to surround these big urban centres and then to start pummeling them with artillery and missiles, degrading the infrastructure and demoralising the population to the point where they capitulate. So that may still be their plan, but for the moment at least, the reports from local officials in this port city of Kherson is that it is under Russian control. We'd heard similar reports about other Russian centres of population. Kharkiv, the second city which is in the northeast of Ukraine, reports that it had been the subject yesterday of an attack by Russian paratroopers, but they had been repelled. That has come under very heavy attack. And then Mariupol, which is another port city looking over the Black Sea. Mariupol is reported to be at the scene of very, very heavy fighting, with local officials there saying there have been mass casualties, nothing more definitive than that claim in terms of numbers. In Kiev itself, there have been explosions heard in the capital city within the last hour, at least 4 large explosions. We don't know at this stage what the potential target for these explosions has been. It is remarkable that we are, day 8? I'm losing count now. And Kiev, this capital city with such strategic importance for the Russian forces, still remains firmly, it seems, within Ukrainian control today. As far as the Ukrainian politicians are concerned, President Volodymyr Zelensky has been claiming within the last couple of hours in terms of death tolls. Now, he has been putting out what appear on the face of it to be really quite staggering figures. We've no way at all of independently verifying what President Zelensky says, but he is saying nearly 9,000 Russian soldiers have been killed. Now, that is just staggering if true. As to say, it all has to be taken with some caution, given the information war that is raging on both sides. We did have an admission from the Russian authorities yesterday, from their defense ministry, that almost 500 Russian troops had been killed. So it's likely, I think, if they're admitting that, to be probably significantly higher than that. Maybe the claims from the president seem very high, perhaps somewhere in the middle. Regardless, even if we're talking that lowest figure, the fact that 500 Russian troops almost have been killed is still a very significant figure. And while, of course, all of the fighting rages, then the refugees continue to try to seek a safer environment, heading for the border of Ukraine, trying to spill over the border into neighbouring countries. And the latest figures that we have from the United Nations are that 1 million refugees have now crossed the border into countries like Poland, where we're told that actually more than 500,000 have now crossed into Poland. Romania as well, 150,000, we think, as of yesterday. So it's likely to be much more. Slovakia, Hungary, all taking their share of refugees who just want to flee, understandably, the fighting that is raging throughout Ukraine.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Mark White, our security correspondent there, with what has been happening overnight. Let's go to Major General Jonathan Shaw. He's a former Director of Special Forces and Commander of UK forces in southern Iraq in 2007. Commander, Major General, the significance of Kherson, it falling, if it has fallen, what do you read into that?
Okay, so I think we all expected that, given the mass of troops, that they would somehow overwhelm the place. It's very interesting, as your report was suggesting, that they seem to have taken this without flattening it with artillery first, which is not their normal tactics. What you're seeing in Kharkiv is more the normal Russian way of doing warfare, which is to flatten everything with artillery first. And so we sort of potentially enter the second phase of this. People have always said it's very easy to take these places, or relatively easy. The hard thing is to control them. And what we shall see now is whether the Ukrainian resistance continues after the invasion, and that Russia is potentially now entering the incursion, the insurgency stage of the operation. The nightmare scenario that in the end we never managed to control in Iraq, we never managed to control in Afghanistan, that the Russians never managed to control in Afghanistan. And if we're entering that insurgency stage, this is precisely where Putin would not have wanted to end up. So we'll have to wait and see whether the Ukrainian fighting spirit continues. What we should expect is a bit of a lull in Kherson for now. No immediate reprisal. What I expect the inhabitants to be doing is just watching the Russian patterns behaviour, seeing how it settles down, seeing where their vulnerabilities are, and then they'll start striking them. So we should expect a quiet pause now, and then we should expect the Ukrainians, at a time of their own choosing, if they want to fight, to start fighting.
Major General, we've spoken a lot over the last week with many experts suggesting that this long convoy heading towards the capital, Kiev, which has only in the last 24 hours moved, we believe, 2 miles, as being something of a decoy full of unwilling, demotivated conscripts with old, outdated hardware. And what we're seeing in the places like Kherson and Kharkiv are the proper Russian professional soldiers going in, the paratroopers. Would you agree with that assessment? And, you know, what is the purpose of that decoy then, if that's the case?
Well, I can't really answer your first question because I have no more information than you do, so I'll take your word for that. But the purpose of it, I mean, that's an interesting theory that it's just a decoy. My view on this was that actually the last thing Putin wants is to destroy Kiev. Kiev is a political target, not a military target, in my view. It's about the seat of government. It's about replacing Zelensky as president and putting a puppet in place. So it's a political target, not a military one. If I can make that distinction. So what I thought was happening was that Kharkov was being used as an example. It was being sort of sacrificed, if you like. They were going to flatten Kharkov in a way to terrify the occupants of Kiev and persuade them not to fight. And a delayed convoy that's just sitting there as a potent threat fits that narrative. So that's what I think was going on.
Would you be tackling, I mean, if you were in charge, would you be sending in special forces? Would you be sending in the Air Force on that convoy? I mean, it sits there defiant.
Well, as Ukrainian, well, absolutely. And the fact that it's not being attacked from the air probably tells you something about the lack of Ukrainian Air Force. I'm sure they have it on their target list, or they may consider that they've got more immediate targets to hit. My own view on the low morale, I think the way this war is going to end is or one of the ways this war could end is if the Russian army just downs tools and gets fed up with the job. And I think that's something that really people should play on. And when you look at the economic costs of the invasion, as your reports were saying earlier, the economic costs of this invasion are just immense to the whole world. And I just wonder what the price is to try and induce some of these people to resign. I mean, look at what's happening on the stock market, oil price, corn prices. Offering $100,000 to each soldier who deserts from the Russian forces might sound like quite a good deal. Actually, it'd be cheap at the price. And looking at the fact that these people haven't a clue why they're there, they don't know what they're doing, they're completely unmotivated, I think quite a few would be ripe to desert. I think we need to play and we need to dangle these carrots over them. We need to do all we can to undermine the Russian soldiers' morale and give them a way out and stop them fighting. Because if Putin's army deserts on him, then he's finished.
Yeah, and look, we're talking a lot about the cost of war in terms of the damage to the country, but also, of course, the civilians. Lots of comparisons being drawn with Chechnya and the Russians taking of Grozny. I think 8,000 civilians were killed in that. Do you see parallels between the two, and can more be done to try and help civilians in Ukraine, and if so, what?
I would imagine that Putin had no intention of having a second Grozny, of making this like the Chechen war. Chechnya was to use that dreadful phrase, a far-off country of which we know little. And no one really cared, which is a terrible thing to say, but sadly true. Ukraine is right up front in our headlines, and Putin will have known this. And so he will have wanted to avoid a Grozny, not least because he says this is his, these are his brothers. Ukraine is our brothers. So you don't go around flattening your brothers like that. So I don't think he wants to get engaged in a Grozny-style assault at all, but he's been forced to by the fierce resistance. And I think he was sold a line that it would be a quick victory, and that simply hasn't happened. So he's got a situation that he really doesn't want to be in. Having said that, there is a rationale to what the troops are doing. Just to say, all that emphasis on the south bears out one of the scenarios that I thought was quite likely if you were Putin trying to do it. It's building that land bridge from the Russian population enclaves in the east of Ukraine to Crimea, and they're very close to achieving that if they haven't achieved it already. And building that land link to Crimea, thus secures the conquest of 2014, I think is a perfectly rational military objective to make their gains of 2014 sustainable. So that
Major
has
General,
got to
really,
plan.
thank you. Really appreciate your analysis. We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your input.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Can I speak to Ksenia Donakova, who is a resident in Kyiv, and we're going to cross to her right now. Ksenia, how are things with you today?
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
Camera. Thank you for giving this opportunity to be here. Thanks God we're alive now from the long night. So as you see, we try to save each other in our flats with these pillows and blankets in the window because every day there are a lot of during the whole day there are signals of air attack. So we try to be at home, try to be safe as much as it's possible, and so we pray. We try to live, and we wish. We pray for only one thing, that this whole nightmare will finish and these Russian invaders get out from our country, and we will be safe, happy, and will live in this our country.
Yeah.
So you start every day with that prayer and those thoughts. I mean, even in the midst of all of this, you're just still thankful that you are alive.
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, Ksenia, it's heartbreaking talking to you, and we feel so very helpless. And I know, there's so much goodwill and support coming over from the UK to you. Can I ask you why you've decided to stay? So many of your fellow Ukrainians have taken that difficult decision to get out. Is it something that you've battled with?
Actually, Kyiv is my city, Ukraine is my country, and it's very scary to stay here. But I realized that this is my city, this is my home, and so I will stay here. And if somebody will need me, I will try to help. And also, it's very dangerous now to go by car to some the western region. So that's why I'm just stay home, because even it's scary for me to go for a walk or go just somewhere. That's why we try to just stay home and try to save each other, me, my family. I'm in the flat with my husband, with my father, and with the mother and sister of my husband.
Yeah. But Ksenia, there are people who do go out and about, and they're volunteers, and they try and help others who cannot get out or won't come out.
Sorry, about volunteers, you said?
Yeah, what do the volunteers do? How do they help?
They also, for example, it's a small airport, Hostomel. It's very serious place which also was bombed by Russians, and in near Hostomel in Bucha there was a grandpa of my husband, and so he was alone in his flat, and volunteers came yesterday there to his house and helped him to take him to his other relatives. So they came there, they feed him, they help him to get all the clothes together, and they get him to another relatives. So they try to help with everything, with food, with transport, with medicine, so with everything.
Kesnia, just finally, if you could send a message to President Putin, what would you say to him 1 week on?
I have no words. Just why and how a person could be so cruel. So I can't even imagine why he's there.
Well, Kesnia, thank you very much indeed. Kesnia Donakova there.
Thank you very much.
Resident, thank you. In her flat, she's afraid to go outside. She's there with her husband. She's there with her father as well, and they're in that flat in the centre of Kyiv. Let's bring you up to date with the latest news situation with the time at 19 minutes past 6.
The Russian billionaire Roman Abramovic has decided to sell Chelsea Football Club days after the threat of sanctions was raised in Parliament. He'll also not be asking for the loans he made to Chelsea to be repaid.
Uber is set to offer unlimited free rides from Ukraine to the Polish border. This is apparently part of a set of initiatives the American company announced to support Ukraine after the invasion.
In other news this morning, mental health problems are costing the UK economy almost £118 billion per year. That's equivalent to 5% of our GDP. The Mental Health Foundation and the London School of Economics say 3/4 of the loss is from lost productivity and the costs of unpaid carers.
Zero-tolerance policies on drugs in universities can do more harm than good. A new report suggests the Higher Education Policy Institute says a more health-focused approach to drug taking would be more effective rather than preventing drug use.
Commuters in London are facing another day of tube strikes. It's the second time this week. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are in a deadlock dispute over jobs, pay and pensions.
Voters are set to cast their ballots in the Birmingham-Erdington by-election, triggered by the death of Labour frontbencher Jack Dromey. Paulette Hamilton is contesting the seat for Labour. Robert Alden will try to become the first Tory MP in the constituency since 1936.
And two of Banksy's artworks have sold for more than £7 million at an auction in London. Vandalised oils went for almost £4.4 million, whilst Girl with Balloon fetched for £2.8 million.
Don't get it. Just don't get it. The Banksy thing. Never have got it.
I mean, I understood it when it was amazing street art, but, you know, to have a canvas of a bit of graffiti, not necessarily worth 4.4 million. But I'm obviously from Bristol, spent a lot of time in Bristol where he's from, so I used to see them popping up overnight and they were always really great. But I don't really understand this whole, well, often the value of art is baffling, isn't it?
It's in the eye of the beholder. Coming up, Russia has unleashed a new wave of cyber attacks. But how are we going to protect ourselves from those? That to come after the weather forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGiven. A dull and damp start for most of us. Frost-free, however, with the extensive cloud overnight. And then it does turn a little brighter in some places later this afternoon. But at the moment, there's a weather front crossing the country. Very slowly because it's coming up against high pressure to the east. And it's a weakening feature. However, it is bringing an extensive area of cloud and outbreaks of rain to Scotland, western parts of England as well as Wales. Hill fog as well, but that area of cloud and rain narrowing, and so it's less extensive by the afternoon, and that means that parts of eastern England will brighten up. Plenty of sunshine here, highs of 10 to 13 Celsius. Where it's raining across central parts of the country, 9 or 10 degrees, but by the end of the afternoon, West Wales, Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, southwest England also sees brighter skies developing to the rear of the front, and a few showers starting to arrive. Most of those showers stay offshore overnight and inland, I think, for Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest under clear skies. A touch of frost is possible, also for East Anglia. But away from those areas, we keep the cloud, we keep those outbreaks of rain going, very slowly edging east, so that it's the eastern Scotland, northeast England, into the Midlands and the southeast where we'll see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain during Friday morning. The rain tending to be on and off, but it will be fairly persistent for eastern Scotland, northeast England, and it will be falling as snow over the tops of the Grampians. Brighter weather, meanwhile, for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, western England. Temperatures typically up at 9 or 10 degrees in the south, 7 to 8 degrees further north. Those temperatures head slightly downwards during Saturday and Sunday, but at the same time, most places will see the weather turn drier and brighter, albeit with just 1 or 2 showers.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We're going to talk about the subject of cyber attacks now with the time at 26 minutes past 6.
Yes, they seem to be as important to the Russian strategy in Ukraine as bombs and bullets. So we're asking what can be done to protect against this latest wave of cyber attacks.
We're going to go to tech journalist Will Guyat now on this one. Will, despite denials from big companies and things, do you think it's happening already? I'm not just talking about Ukraine. I'm talking about here, counter-cyber attacks in the UK and in other parts of Europe.
Well, everybody's on high alert at the moment, Eamonn. We had the BA, the British Airways outage last weekend, which they've now said was just rubbish computer systems rather than being hacked by an external entity. But there's definitely a concern that this is happening. We've had multiple attacks on Ukrainian websites, state websites, banks, etc. The Kremlin website hadn't worked for about 5 days the last time I checked it, due to repeated cyber attacks from external organizations. We haven't heard of anything major yet in the UK. UK or in Europe, but it is a matter of time because you go back to the old adage that anything we can do to them, they can do to us. You've got multiple parties who might want to inflame some sort of cyber conflict between the West and Russia at the moment. Don't forget, you've got the North Koreans have got a pretty able cyber defense team because at some stage they worked out it was cheaper and more effective to spend greater amounts of money on cyber warfare than it was to buy lots of conventional weapons. So there is a concern that various parties will have access to the tools to do this. There's been a case in the last few days in that's targeted the Ukraine, and there's a new piece of malware, and this is called Usyk Wiper. Now, you don't need to worry too much about the name, but what happened here, when we go back to 2017, when we had the big attack on which took down the NHS for several days, that was actually a piece of malware that was created by the Russians to cause destruction in the Ukraine. Hackers then got hold of it and started almost effectively selling it commercially. Now, that piece of malware, which impacted computers around the world, did over $10 billion worth of damage. And that's without a missile or anything being fired. So these cyber attacks, when they happen to businesses, be it the ransomware attacks, which lock up all of your files and stop you from accessing stuff and try to make you pay a ransom, or something that just physically wreaks havoc and damage to a computer network and requires experts to come in and put it all back together. Very, very costly and very time-consuming.
Yeah, so as you say, this isn't just about state warfare, cyber warfare. This can affect individual citizens. And, you know, any of us could find ourselves in a position where we're having to pay ransomware. Is that the case?
Yeah, that is. That's absolutely true. Now, that doesn't mean you've been attacked by the Russian state, because there's so many of these pieces of malware and software that can impact your computer, which have often been created for these almost military purposes and then sold on to commercial companies. The biggest thing you can do as a viewer of GB News this morning, listener to GB News, if you're watching or listening, keep your devices up to date. I know it's annoying. I know people like me always come on and talk about, make sure you've accepted all your latest updates on your device. By doing that, you're effectively stopping the major threats. Your company, the company who creates your device, is either one step ahead or very close behind the hackers. So as soon as they're aware there's a problem, they will update your device and make sure that it's so-called patched and updated. That's what's happened. That's what happened with the NHS back in 2017. The NHS had lots of really, really old computer systems in it at that point, using Windows 95 that couldn't be effectively updated. So that's what happened. So if you do all you can to keep your systems updated, that's good. But we are also relying on the tech companies and the people who provide us with our services to do the same thing. That is the slight challenge here. You can do everything you can to your house, but you might find somebody else gets impacted to cause problems to your accounts and services.
Well, get the message. Thanks for the advice, Will. Really appreciate it. That's the latest on the possibility of cyber attacks, and Will is a tech journalist.
Now, a Ukrainian journalist has been granted a UK visa to live with her partner from Manchester. Maria Romanenko and her boyfriend Jez Myers were forced to flee Kiev as Russian forces began to invade the country.
Well, after a very long journey crossing the border between Ukraine and Poland, they finally made it back to Manchester. They got to the airport last night, and waiting for them, our North West of England reporter Bradley Harris. Bradley, good morning.
Morning. Yeah, this is an incredible story of a couple who were forced to flee Kiev, a city they both love so much, and take refuge at a friend's house in Warsaw in Poland before making a terrifying 23-hour journey across the border from Ukraine. You mentioned the Ukrainian journalist Maria there, who was unsure about whether she would actually get a visa to come back to the UK with Jez, who's her partner and who's from Manchester. Luckily, though, with the help from the British Embassy, she did get that visa waived. She's back in the UK. I was in touch with her yesterday. She landed at Manchester Airport last night, and I caught up with them to find out how their experience was throughout that entire journey. Let's hear their thoughts.
Just very tiresome, very long. It was scary in parts because there was this bit with like a kind of like a fenced area, and it was absolutely crushed there because there were like thousands of people in this very small area. And I felt sick at one point, so that I really needed to like push myself out, because it was like, if I don't get out from here, I don't know what will happen, but I was just really scared. So I like pushed myself out, and Jez was left behind, and I was very worried about him. There were like people carried out, like unconscious, and a report of somebody dying, and it was just like a very, very scary environment. It was very tiring, and again, as Jess said, no food, no water. I wasn't able to go to the toilet for 23 hours.
There were some long journeys on the way. I think we've done 1,500 kilometres on roads and walking, and then the flight as well. So just glad to be back. I could kiss the lovely Mancunian ground.
And to have a foreign army, that's very, very strong foreign army, come to your country and just bomb everything and have airstrikes and have troops and have people, paratroopers, landing in an airport that they previously tried to destroy. Pretty much positive that Ukraine will prevail. It's just a question of how many days it will take, how many victims it will take, how many casualties it will take. So I think there's various ways how it could go, but I know that for sure, sooner or later, Ukraine will win because the truth is on our side.
That was Maria, who was giving a real account of how things have changed so dramatically in Ukraine, how her life has completely turned upside down. She never expected to be back here in the UK, but she is now. This just shows, it's one example of how far people are willing to go to escape a country that is completely stricken by war.
Very much, Bradley. Really appreciate that. And, you know, just a call out and a word to people who... Bradley can go. We're finished with him. Just a call out to people who work in airports, and Manchester Airport there, which is particularly close to me. We use it a lot for various reasons. And they are so kind. They are so good from when you enter to the car park to right through. Just really friendly people, through security even, check-in, whatever. And I say that to everybody who works in an airport and loads luggage onto planes and does all the things that we forget and we take for granted. And they're under a lot of pressure a lot of times. And I say that, Isabel, because breakfast television is watched by so many people who work in airports or cabin
I was
crew.
going to say, good morning, if you work in an airport this morning, why don't you stick GB News up on all the big TV screens around your airport departure lounges?
It's done.
Why not?
It's done. I mean,
That's on your screen.
I went into Belfast, the lounge in Belfast City Airport.
Popped it on.
And I was aghast. I mean, I know all the guys there, and I go, what's going on here? They said, Eamonn, how's the new job? I said, well, you should know. You should have it on now.
It's going very well.
Go over and we put it on, and that's it. And that's my mission around airport lounges.
Yeah, let's take it on.
Just get it on there.
New campaign.
But thanks, everybody. And I was on an airplane recently, and the captain, I was congratulating the captain as I was walking off on his the way he landed the plane during a storm.
Oh, yes.
And he said, we had Dan Wooten on last week.
Oh, right.
He said, yeah. He said, does everybody from GB News fly like this? So won't say the airline, but anyway, he was very happy. It was the official carrier of GB News presenters.
Fantastic. I'll have to book a flight ASAP. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we'll go through the papers this morning with David Wooding and Kate Hardcastle. See you in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The front pages you're waking up to stack up like this on this Thursday morning, beginning with the Daily Telegraph.
It reports that the southern city of Kherson has become the first in Ukraine to fall to the Russians.
Daily Mirror next, a photo of a baby born in a bomb shelter as Vladimir Putin continues his assault on the city.
The Times leads with the destruction of schools and hospitals as Putin continues his barrage of Ukraine.
Here's The Guardian, the headline, Russia wants to, what does that say?
Erase
us, warns Ukraine president. Quite chilling, that.
The Eyes headline simply says, welcome to hell, picturing that mother who gave birth in a Kiev maternity hospital underneath the city in an air raid shelter.
The Sun simply says, Klyarovsky, as Russian billionaire Roman Abramovic puts Chelsea Football Club up for sale. And here is the Daily Express.
It's reporting that some Russian soldiers have said they were deceived into fighting against Ukrainians. Shows a tearful Russian soldier there.
Well, on that point, we're going to get into the newspapers now in the company of political editor for The Sun on Sunday, David Wooding, and business expert Kate Hardcastle. And David, akin to that and what Russian soldiers feel is you're taking that headline from the Express.
Yes, this is the other side of the story. We've heard a lot over the last week about the Ukrainians suffering terribly under this Russian onslaught. What we've not heard a lot about is the invading army, and it appears that a lot of these are young boys, conscript soldiers, barely in their 20s, who are being used as cannon fodder. And the Daily Express splash is focusing with that graphic picture of a sobbing young boy on the way that the Ukrainians have dealt with these prisoners of war. They've handcuffed them and taken them in, but they've fed them and then said, talk to your mum, put them on the telephone, and they've made a video call to the mothers, sobbing down their phone as they spoke to the mum, said, come to Ukraine and collect them and take them home. Gosh. And that's the sort of thing. These boys are saying, we were told by Putin and his generals that we were going in to liberate and we'd be welcomed with flowers thrown at us. And in fact, these are people who are part of our community. It's a bit like England invading Scotland or vice versa. Yeah. We're all they're part of the same region, and they're friends and rivals in that sense.
It was interesting. We just interviewed Major General Jonathan Shaw, and he was saying that the Russian army could be key to all of this if they simply downed tools, and if, as it's being reported, the morale is as low as it looks. That could be one of the answers in all of this.
Well, I don't think it's going to be simple for the Russian army to down tools. I think it's a bit naive to think they would.
It is difficult, but it just shows there's not the. They might not have the stomach for the fight that
they may be easily distracted.
And they've suffered some casualties. I mean, they talk about there's talk about 500. The Russians are admitted.
Yeah, but the Ukrainians are talking about 6,000 or so.
Exactly,
I mean, which I cannot believe.
No,
I just cannot. They couldn't be as high as that.
Usually, as a journalist, you probably think that it's somewhere in between.
Yeah, more down than up, I would have thought, but who knows? Now listen, extraordinary scenes, Kate, yesterday in the House of Commons, Prime Minister's questions, and it turned into a bit of a tribute. It turned into a tribute of a man who we know in the studio, and that is the Ukrainian ambassador to London. And this is the reception he got at Prime Minister questions yesterday. oh, well, best laid plans, never happened. That's all these
We were
plans.
trying to show you a clip of Vadim
everybody
Psycho, and he came in to our show.
applauding.
We'll get it in the next one. Listen,
that.
yeah, he got a standing ovation in the Commons yesterday, and rightly so. And it has been impressive. We've seen it in the States as well. The roles of the ambassadors in rallying the West's response to the war. And you've chosen the story, Kate, at the front of the Daily Mirror, focusing on the mothers stuck, trapped, giving birth in a war.
Sometimes a picture speaks 1,000 words, doesn't it? And I think that front page of a child being born in a makeshift maternity ward, when that procedure alone can need medical assistance and support to a significant level, it just really brings home the poignancy, I think, of the reality of life trying to carry on in some way in these significantly challenged environments and situations. I think we are hearing, and I just want to say this as well, you know, when we talk about things like we're going to talk about Chelsea and the businesses that are making a stance, that's by no means to deflect or take attention away from that real situation. But what I think is different is we're seeing action happen sooner. We are seeing businesses take a stance. We are seeing organisations make their feelings be heard. We've got the flag on pretty much every single header of the paper here. I think that there is certainly a standing up to what we're seeing as absolutely a fight against civilization, and quite rightly so. I mean, anyone this week, I think we've all found it very difficult. I take my hat off to you. In journalism, I don't know how you do what you do. I don't know how you take this in every day. We're allowed to go and put our phones down and walk away from time to time. It's incredibly challenging because you just want to do something. Of course, we're donating. Of course, we're trying to help with supplies being sent. But this is, you know, we just don't feel
on
we can
that
do
subject, Kate, and that's the really difficult thing to do, the donations. And David, front page of the Daily Mail for you. And here you have the Duchess of Cornwall moved to tears about the refugee appeal.
Yes, the Daily Mail have had a rather successful appeal here of the £2.5 million raised in barely a week, which is probably one of the fastest growing newspaper appeals in history. And Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, went to the Ukraine Cathedral in London. There's a community of about 70,000 Ukrainians in the UK. And she was moved to tears by this, and was so moved that she has made a substantial donation of her own to this appeal. And I think she speaks for a lot of people. She's handled herself really well since she moved into the frontline role.
I think the real praise really goes to the people who donate, and the people who organise, and the people who take on board all the, what would you call it, you know, the appealing for sanitary products and underwear and supplies and things, and then get all that out there, the logistics of all of that's amazing.
It never ceases to amaze me when we get a crisis like this, how the British public pull together and how they get things out on the front line.
Yeah. Despite this being
astonishing.
some of the most challenging times
Yes.
for a lot of families as well. You see some of the most pressured financial families doing the most. Now, I absolutely know that some of those supplies aren't making it where they need to. They're getting to borders like Poland and not being able to make it through. But the fact is they're getting to some people that need them urgently and desperately. There's always something we can do. But I just feel most of us just feel depleted that we just read this onslaught of news. And we are so grateful for the journalists reporting the truth in a war where we actually don't always hear accurate facts.
Yeah, and look, we had Kesnia Donakova, resident of Kiev, in tears on the programme about half an hour ago, absolutely unable to speak at times. And, you know, you'd have to have a heart of stone not to be moved by stories like hers.
I want to move on to Roman Abramovic here. And here's my question, right? It's okay, everybody hounding this guy. Oh, Abramovic is a mate of Putin's. Oh, where did he get his money from? Where's it been invested? He's owned Chelsea for 20 years. How come it's just now that everybody's sort of wising up to this?
But don't you think that's the case with everything, Eamonn? I mean, don't you think that, you know, this hasn't just happened overnight? There's been years where there's been information coming back that this potentially might be the case. We have had businesses and interests within Russia for years and years. Don't you think that's the case, that much more could have been done sooner?
Well, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying, why has it taken 20 years? Suddenly everybody's horrified by this.
Because we were enjoying Abramovic's money at the club, weren't we, and investing left, right,
Well, I
and centre.
wasn't enjoying
Well, no, I'm saying
There was a
British public.
1.5 billion spent. I can't believe I'm discussing football with Mr. Eamonn Holmes here, OBE. But, you know, I mean, on the business side of this, certainly there have been the golden years of the club. But even fans interviewed at the match last night were saying, look, it's football second, lives first. We need this. There has certainly been a call from the football industry and beyond for there to be condemnation of Putin. And that has yet happened. I think we're on statement 3 and we've still not got there.
So what about Abramovich? How closely linked is he with Putin?
Well, I want to bring David Wooding in on all of this because we were talking before we came on air about some of the reporting around this tucked away quite far inside some of the papers, about Abramovich actually having the trust, despite being a crony of Putin and a loyalist who's never put a step wrong in terms of the criticising the Kremlin. He's actually got the trust of Zelensky because they have this Judaism in common, and of course Abramovich has done quite a lot of anti-Semitic philanthropy. The paper's reporting that he's become perhaps an unlikely peace broker in all of this. We don't know if it's true, but what do the papers say?
Yes, well, there was some suggestion that his private jet, or one of his private jets, was tracked from Nice, which is close to Monaco, of course, all the way to Belarus and Moscow last week. And there is some suggestion that he may be acting as a secret peace broker. Now, that may explain why the British government is not moving on him with sanctions immediately.
This came up in PMQs yesterday.
In PMQs yesterday,
yeah.
Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, said, why are we still waiting? And you just rightly, Eamonn, said, well, this has been going on for 20 years. Why has nothing been done? Well, in fact, the questions have been asked, why has nothing been done in the past week when 9, I think, oligarchs have been sanctioned? So this might explain why the government are loath to act. The other reason, of course, is the lawyers who are taking a lot of money to
and you know, the cynic in me also thinks that could be quite a decent PR story that's been published by the Abramovich team. If, hang on a minute, don't come after me because I'm a peace broker. We don't know the facts around it, but, you know, we've always got to be sceptical of all of these things.
Well, I'll tell you this, going back to when he first took over Chelsea, and we were aware he was on the football scene. I remember once being at a match at Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium, and Abramovich was arriving. And the security was like unprecedented. It wouldn't have been the same security for a royal even. He had his own people. He had something like 6 rows around him. Nobody was allowed to sit in these areas, escorted in and escorted out with bodyguards. It was incredible actually to watch, but that was a man who was in fear of his own life, even back then.
And of course, he's not said a word of criticism of Vladimir Putin yet.
His daughter has.
His daughter put a meme up, did she not?
Perhaps slightly dangerous, but... Right, have we got time for any more papers? I'm not sure how we're doing for time. What do we think? We can do one more. Kate, let's talk about something different. Let's move away. Let's turn inside the Daily Mail, page 21. It's not a very uplifting story, but the tributes to this deceased children's author have been pouring in.
Yes, absolutely. Shirley Hughes, author of Dogger, and she's been remembered by her daughter who said that she'll shine on forever, which I think happens with children's books. And David and I have been having... It's World Book Day, and I was going to mention that. We've been talking about how the authors of your childhood really impact your life, and you go on to read their story. And I was saying that even though there's a bridge of 6 years between my children, the 12-year-old and the twins at 6, they have quite different authors that they're absolutely crazy about. And you know those stories are going to last a lifetime for them. So I think it's actually quite poignant and beautiful that there's this beautiful tribute to how much Shirley Hughes has impacted the lives of so many, particularly with literacy. And with World Book Day, I always think about literacy. It's such a skill, such an honour to be able to read, and so many people who don't have that opportunity. So I think we celebrate with all of our young people going to school today in
You're dressing
costumes.
up.
Oh, my word.
What have you got in your household today?
We have a highway rat.
Okay.
And we have a unicorn, because unicorns just generally...
Just universally brilliant. Yeah, we've got Harry Potter going to school today for World Book Day, and my 4-year-old has undecided. It will be just whatever comes out the fancy dress box.
Okay.
That's what 4-year-olds do, right?
I want to talk about COVID, a different twist on it this time, David, how it affects animals.
Yes, well, we were told all the time that since 2 years ago when it all started that it did not cross between humans and animals. Well, there's a story in the Daily Star here about a cat that got the cream, but didn't realise it had got the cream because it couldn't taste it or smell it, according to its owners. And they spent £5,000 on vet's bills, including blood tests, which showed it had antibodies for I think it was the Delta variant of coronavirus. So, in fact, this might be the first where it's been proven that the animal, it was sneezing and spluttering as well. So, interesting that perhaps it does cross.
And also, and you don't really think about this is Arnie.
Of course the dog stories leapt
I
out
knew
at you.
that picture was
I was
coming
just
out.
waiting for us to stop talking about the cat so that the dog could come in.
And Arnie
Looks a
is
bit like Maggie.
medical hero. And Arnie has helped save the lives of more than 80 dogs
Hold it up
by
again,
donating 21 pints of blood.
Wow.
So that's a bit of a record. So apparently he's now retired from giving blood. He's reached the age limit involved in all of this. He's 9 years of age. So blood donors from dogs as well. Guys, thank you very much indeed. They'll be back in about 45 minutes.
We're going to go to our report now from Amelia Harper. No, we're not.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine is intensifying. But so too is the effort in the UK to help Ukrainian refugees and soldiers. After a call out on social media, this house in Cambridge, now a storage facility for supplies to be sent to the Ukraine-Poland border. Volunteers creating packs of donations for both civilian refugees and for the Ukrainian soldiers.
Okay, so you are in charge of the blocks for 2 children and make them happy. Yeah, whatever they need. Okay, you do it.
Children choosing what children in a war zone might need to survive. Their mother, Alicia, organised the collections.
I woke up to the news and I was crying. That's all I was doing. And I'm sorry. It's okay. I just could not do nothing. I couldn't sit and watch the news. And in more news I was watching, the more overwhelmed I was. And I just can't imagine being in that position. People were coming and coming and coming. Everyone cried.
For Ukrainian volunteers, there's worry that President Putin has sealed their country's fate after the recent bombing of our Kyiv's Freedom Square.
It was destroyed completely with a bomb, blast bomb. So I imagination how many people could be dying there. So it was just there to buy a bread. It's horrible.
From here, supplies will be driven to refugees on Poland's border with Ukraine. After that, a handful of volunteers based in Poland are driving into Ukraine to get the packs to soldiers.
So it took us around like 2 hours on the way to Ukraine. On the way back, we were actually escorted by the police force, the Ukrainian police force, to get to the border as fast as possible. So we skipped all the long queue, which is like around 30, 40 kilometers. There were checkpoints every like 4 or 5 kilometers. There were actually fireplaces with the big barrels where they were putting stuff inside to just burn them. And because it was -7 degrees.
From volunteers in Poland to volunteers here in the UK, the need to help others is uniting communities across Europe.
Once someone smart told me that if you save one person, you're going to save the whole world. If helping isn't what makes you human, then I don't know what is.
Amelia Harper, GB News, Cambridge.
And again, we said it earlier, we said it again, well done to you if you are contributing and you are helping to one of those various appeals.
Yeah, we want to hear your reactions to the stories this morning. Lots of reactions have been coming in to our interview with Kesmi a little bit earlier this hour. Absolutely heartbreaking as she was in tears, telling us she can't leave Kiev. She's got nowhere to go.
Okay, we'll be back after this break and we've got all the news, all the top stories, top of the hour. Please do stay with us.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. A dull and damp start for most of us. Frost-free, however, with the extensive cloud overnight, and then it does turn a little brighter in some places later this afternoon. But at the moment, there's a weather front crossing the country, very slowly because it's coming up against high pressure to the east, and it's a weakening feature. However, it is bringing an extensive area of cloud and outbreaks of rain to Scotland, western parts of England, as well as Wales. Hill fog as well, but that area of cloud and rain narrowing, and so it's less extensive by the afternoon, and that means that parts of eastern England will brighten up. Plenty of sunshine here, highs of 10 to 13 Celsius. Where it's raining across central parts of the country, 9 or 10 degrees, but by the end of the afternoon, West Wales, Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Southwest England also sees brighter skies developing to the rear of the front, and a few showers starting to arrive. Most of those showers stay offshore overnight and inland, I think, for Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest under clear skies. A touch of frost is possible, also for East Anglia. But away from those areas, we keep the cloud, we keep those outbreaks of rain going, very slowly edging east, so that it's eastern Scotland, northeast England, into the Midlands and the southeast where we'll see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain during Friday morning. The rain tending to be on and off, but it will be fairly persistent for eastern Scotland, northeast England, and it will be falling as snow over the tops of the Grampians. Brighter weather, meanwhile, for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, western England. Temperatures typically up at 9 or 10 degrees in the south, 7 to 8 degrees further north. Those temperatures head slightly downwards during Saturday and Sunday, but at the same time, most places will see the weather turn drier and brighter, albeit with just 1 or 2 showers.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
First Ukrainian city reportedly falls to the Russians a week after the start of Putin's invasion.
The time is 7 o'clock exactly. It's Thursday, the 3rd of March. Breakfast here on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Thanks for watching.
We're live across the whole world on TV, on radio and online, leading the news this morning.
We'll be speaking to the former British Army Colonel Tim Collins as the city of Kherson falls to the Russians. Talking to Colonel Collins in about 5 minutes' time.
The number of people fleeing Ukraine has now topped 1 million, according to the United Nations. It is the swiftest refugee exodus of the century.
And over 6,000 people, including children, have been arrested during protests against the war in Russia, including a pensioner who survived the siege of Leningrad.
And as always, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBNews. Well, we reach the grim milestone today of 1 week since war broke out in Ukraine. Let's get the very latest this morning from our security editor, Mark White.
Well, good morning. We've just got the latest information through from the Ministry of Defence, their intelligence briefing from their analysis of what is happening on the ground. And this information coming from them now, they say despite heavy Russian shelling, the cities of Kharkiv in the northeast, Chernihiv, which is north of the Ukrainian capital, Mariupol, all remain under Ukrainian, within Ukrainian hands. Some Russian forces, they say, have entered the city of Kherson, which we've been reporting this morning, but crucially, they say the military situation remains unclear. So those reports that Kherson had fallen, not confirmed. It is unclear, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. The Ukrainian Defence Ministry have just released an image, which I'll explain for our radio listeners. It is very dramatic, a still image, but showing what appears to be a Russian fighter aircraft coming under a missile attack, an explosion, and the pilot of that aircraft ejecting from that. Now, the Ukrainian military claim that they have shot down 5 Russian aircraft in the past 24 hours. We've no way of independently verifying that, but it is coming from them. Other images released by the Russian military, or at least allowing cameras on board, show their helicopters in the sky over Ukraine. It's clear that they have air superiority, but not necessarily complete control of the skies. And we're hearing that more of these Stinger missiles are being sent to the country from the US and various other nations, NATO allies, to help with the effort. And they, of course, can be used to bring down aircraft. In terms of the Ukrainian capital, heavy explosions heard around the capital this morning. We don't know what the potential target was, but in a town just northeast of the Ukrainian capital, Borodyanka, some really concerning images coming out of whole neighbourhoods that appear to have been very badly affected by Russian bombardment, either from the air or from the ground. In terms of what the situation is in these other areas, you heard in that MOD briefing that has just come out that there is very significant fighting in and around Kherson. Images from yesterday showed some Russian forces gingerly picking their way through the streets, taking cover at the sides of buildings and behind trees. Some heavy fighting in and around that city, but they do not, it's not known whether they actually have complete control of Kherson. Conflicting reports coming out this morning. And as I say, with the other cities, Kharkiv and Mariupol, and also Kherson, as I say, they are surrounded, very significant activity in and around those cities, but they remain, at least Mariupol and Kharkiv do, in Ukrainian control at this time. And finally, for the moment, the humanitarian situation is very significant, escalating all the while. Now 1 million people have spilled over the borders into friendlier nations from Ukraine, 450,000 alone into Poland, according to the government there yesterday, and about 150,000 crossed over to Romania.
Thank you very much.
Tell you what we're going to do now and get reaction from another specialist. He's a man I've long wanted to meet. He's from Belfast, the same as me, and his name is Colonel Tim Collins. Now retired, of course, British officer and chairman of a security services company, pinpoint corporate services. Colonel Collins, great to talk to you, and I'll tell you the reason I so wanted to talk to you today. That speech that you made in Iraq when you were leading the Royal Irish Regiment, and you were leading them into battle. You wanted to succeed in a mission, but that famous speech that you made and a reporter noted, and you said, "We go to liberate, not to conquer. We'll not fly our flags in their country. We are entering Iraq to free a people, and the only flag which will be flown in that ancient land is their own." And the reason I want your perspective is war's not pretty. You know what's involved. There are downsides. You've got to win a fight and whatever. And now we've got Russia, what they're doing, and so many reports of war crimes having been committed. What is your take on what is happening?
Well, I think Putin has got himself in a right old mess. He's got a tiger by the tail. Essentially, what we're seeing here is a Putin-inspired attack. So for that reason, when I talk to the media or write in newspapers, I don't call them Russians. I call them Putinites, because this is not in the name of the Russian people. And he is leading an army that's most unwilling into a war that they don't want. He needs, because his criminal empire is coming to an end. He sees that, and he knows that he can't continue without having established himself with a new Russian empire behind which he can hide. And it's clearly not the will of the Russian people. So what we have is a criminal individual leading a regime. The difference between him and Stalin and Hitler is that they had an ideological underpinning to their regimes, which some of their people could adhere to. This is purely a Putin escapade. He sees, looks in the mirror, he sees Russia. That's part of the problem. And why that's a problem is that, and he has said before that why have a world without Russia in it? What he means is why have a world without Putin in it? So one of the dangers that we face at this point is an escalation to nuclear war. And that's why we in the West have to be very careful that we don't give him the pretense and the pretext to bring about this Armageddon that he would like to resort to if all else fails, and it will fail. And so we mustn't give him that pretext. What we've got to do is hope that the Russian people, and in particular his generals, because that's the best hope that he has, his people can't overthrow him. The oligarchs can't overthrow him. He's far too powerful for that. So the only hope is that his military eventually will grow sick of it and they will remove him.
So you think, Tim, that he would press that nuclear button? In as much as if Adolf Hitler had a nuclear button when he was in the bunker, he would have pressed it. He made it very clear that the German people had betrayed him, and for that reason they should be destroyed. If Putin is surrounded, he will take the same view. He'll believe he's been betrayed by the Russian people. But as I iterate again, this is not the will of the Russian people. These are Putinite forces. This isn't the Russians. And we can see that with the conscripts who are calling their mothers and saying, not in our name. So this is a very complex situation. I'd say to all the armchair generals out there, just relax a bit. Getting involved, no fly zone, any of that at this point in time would be playing entirely into his hands.
It's really interesting you say that because, I mean, it keeps coming up on this programme. We talk about the Budapest Memorandum. So for people at home following this, this was when we persuaded Ukraine to give up their significant nuclear weapons and weaponry on the promise that we would defend them if they got invaded. Now, of course, they've been invaded. We're not actually defending them because of this threat that you've just outlined. And do you think it is a good justification to betray that memorandum?
Well, I think that nuclear war, which would end mankind, is probably something we want to avoid. The initial nuclear exchange would probably end up with the destruction of most of Russia, Northwest Europe and North America. It would lead to a nuclear winter. So places like Latin America and Australia that aren't hit by an initial round, life would cease there anyway because life would be impossible on Earth. So I think it's something we should avoid.
Fair enough. I mean, the scope of this conversation is it's overwhelming, really, isn't it, when we talk about nuclear war? We spoke to Major General Jonathan Shaw about an hour ago, and you mentioned it then, it could be down to the Russian army to overthrow Putin. He was suggesting that perhaps defectors could be given $100,000 to try and be persuaded to down tools. Do you think that could be one of the tactics that the West could employ?
Well, in Iraq, with the information operations we ran against the Iraqi generals, they clearly didn't see it credible because they could have removed Saddam. Anything is worth trying, but I think that the scenario that is that either his troops will down tools during this operation, hopefully that would end it, or he will succeed in taking cities, but in having taken them, he can't occupy them. General von Clausewitz, which General Shaw mentioned in his piece for the Telegraph the other day, said that winning any war is about not defeating the military, it's about bringing the people on side and creating stability. There is no way they can ever create stability because they couldn't possibly occupy all of Ukraine because it's the will of the people of Ukraine not to be occupied. The Russian soldiers who are being made on Putin's behalf to occupy it, the morale would be totally undermined, and that in itself could bring about the defeat of his regime. So the best opportunity and the best hope that he has at this point in time is realize that he's made this blunder and negotiate some form of ceasefire and peace agreement brokered probably by the Chinese. And I think that's most likely what we'll see over the next few days as they realize that this is in a mire and it's going nowhere and it's something they can't sustain. Alternatively, it may well be that his generals take over and step in at that point.
Well, that man hasn't had an ounce of the vision and the compassion you had, because I suppose you were in that Russian situation where you were invading another country. And again, just to quote from your speech, don't treat these people as refugees, for they're in their own country. Their children will be poor in years to come. They will know that the light of liberation in their lives was brought by you. That is what the Russian hierarchy would have been telling their soldiers, and it's turned out anything but. And you say, if there are casualties of war, then remember that when they woke up and got dressed in the morning, they didn't plan to die this day. Allow them dignity in death, bury them properly, mark their graves. Tim, I could go on. It was just like one of the speeches of the century. It was absolutely amazing, but full of dignity, I suppose, in a dirty situation. What should the Russians be doing differently than that they are not doing, on the basis that war has happened? We can't turn the clock back on that.
Well, in my circumstance, I was leading Free Irishmen as part of an international coalition. We were soldiers serving in the British Army. And the thing about Irishmen is that we have never had conscription in Ireland in the First World War, the Second World War. All of the hundreds of thousands of Irishmen that have served in British uniform, and including today, have done so as willing volunteers. And we go there to represent the democracy of Ireland, a free nation. And we succeed for that reason. Putin has pulled the wool over the eyes of his unfortunate soldiers and conscripts, and he has duped them, and this is not in their name. And so the best thing that people can do at this point is hope that the Russian generals and the Russian people will see this and intervene on their own behalf. What can people do? Well, there is a news blackout of Western news. Many people don't believe Western news in Russia, so go on a website, pick a restaurant near Moscow or a big city in St. Petersburg, and write a review and tell the people over their dinner what's happening and tell them it's not in their name and to protest. Get it translated in Google Translate. Tell the Russian people what is happening, because they don't know. And when they know, they will stop this, because this is not in their name.
Tim Collins, thank you so much for your insight. Privileged to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Right.
Well, one of the side effects of the war in Ukraine is, of course, the rising cost of energy, exacerbating the cost of living squeeze here. Well, we can speak now to Jonathan Reynolds. He is the Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Very good morning to you. Look, obviously, our attention is very much on what is happening in Ukraine. But of course, we can't avoid the fact that these sanctions, the impact on the cost of energy, will have implications for people who are already struggling here in the UK.
Yes, good morning. I mean, there's no doubt about that. The position for people in the UK was clearly a challenging one, and the truth is you can only acknowledge that the situation will get worse in terms of energy prices and what people are having to pay. Certainly when we look at what might happen around about October for the next time that the energy household price cap will be looked at. There are things that the government can do to make that easier. No one would deny it's an international situation which is driving those prices, but people will need assistance and help to do that. And of course, as well as that, as you've correctly said, all our minds are every morning getting up and seeing the situation in Kiev and the rest of Ukraine. But there are things we can do in this country that will really help. We've seen some of that with the sanctions so far. But there is now this emergency economic crime bill on Monday in Parliament as well. And we think that's the right thing to do. But we do think there are further things that can be done on Monday that would make the situation and the legislation even more effective than it will be otherwise.
Where do we go in the future, Jonathan? Will anything ever change after this war? Energy dependence on Russia. Who the heck ever thought that was a good idea?
Yes, I mean, there is a better future you can see. That is using our renewable capacity in the UK, in particular nuclear alongside that, where, of course, you're not just doing what's required to tackle climate change, but you have an energy security position there, which is better. I think you're right, Eamonn, to say that, many decades ago when we discovered North Sea oil and gas, that led to a situation where we use gas in the UK not just for domestic heating, which you'd expect, but also for a significant amount of electricity generation. Now that means when gas prices are low, that's quite advantageous, but when they're not and the price of gas is set in large commodity markets on a European and global scale, that means you have a problem not just because your energy costs for businesses are very high, the costs for heating your home are high, your electricity costs have gone up at the same time, and that is very, very challenging. So, yes, there is a better future, but right now what the best thing the government could do, I think, is use, for instance, that windfall tax to raise a little bit of revenue to help mitigate the impact on households for the rest of the year. You will have seen, and so will your viewers, that talk of perhaps a £3,000 a year energy bill by the end of the year. We were talking on this programme a few months ago about what £2,000 would mean, and clearly that is significant. So yes, there is a better future ahead of us, but right now this does require some specific action from the government.
I just want to ask you, whilst we've got you, about Abramovic. Of course, he confirmed yesterday that he will be selling Chelsea Football Club. And of course, Sir Keir Starmer was asking the Prime Minister during Prime Minister's questions yesterday why the UK government hadn't gone after Abramovic. Some of the papers reporting this morning that perhaps he's become something of an unlikely broker of peace due to the trust that Zelensky has in him. He is an Israeli Russian billionaire. He also, of course, shares Judaism with Zelensky and reportedly, according to these reports, flew in his private jet to take part in those peace talks on the Belarusian border. Do you think that should make him immune from sanctions, and do you think that there could be a role for him in that, if this is true?
Well, look, I can't comment on the validity of that story because I honestly couldn't verify it myself. What I would say is there's a crucial issue for this country, which is, so the government's key measure on Monday in the economic crime bill is a register of who really owns property in the UK. So Land Registry would tell you if a foreign company owned a building in the UK, but we wouldn't know who really owned that company. Now, that is a huge loophole in which money laundering, assets can be hidden in. And so we were promised change on this in 2016 by David Cameron. It was supposed to begin in 2018, and that didn't happen. Now, the crucial thing that needs to happen on Monday, for not just the oligarchs people are familiar with because they own high-profile assets, but for everyone, the government's proposal is there will be 18 months to register the information that register would provide. So, of course, in that 18 months, you've got the potential to divest of assets, to conceal activity. Our amendment on Monday, which we're asking all MPs to support, would reduce that registration period to 28 days. So the crucial thing for every person who might be covered in the interesting place this has put us, is that you've got to get that information public, but you've got to have a situation where you're not allowing people a period of time. You can't say to people, we're going to come after you, we're going to expose where your assets really are, but you've got 18 months to prepare for that. I think that has to be much quicker. 28 days is a reasonable position. So that's the big change for everyone who's affected by this that I hope to see over there on Monday.
Yeah, just to be clear, I wasn't asking you to verify the story. I was just asking whether you thought, in theory, it would be a good justification for someone to avoid sanctions. But I understand if you don't want to answer that. Jonathan Reynolds, Shadow Secretary for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, thanks very much.
Thank you. Let's get an update on what's going to happen today politically, and indeed anything maybe Jonathan Reynolds has just said there. Tom Harwood's our political reporter.
Yeah, it's interesting listening there to Jonathan Reynolds, and particularly what would happen with regard to mitigating this cost of living crisis, because this is where what we hear and what we see on the front pages of our newspapers that can sometimes seem, although it's a heartstring tugging conflict, how does this affect us in this country? And for many it will be this cost of living crisis, and the idea that energy bills are rising, the idea that cost of living in general, the effect on food prices, this is where the politics is moving to. And so it's interesting to hear the political responses to those questions, the policy proposals in terms of how to deal with those questions. This is where the political battleground is moving to, because whilst still we're seeing the midst of war dominate politics, and Prime Minister's questions yesterday was almost entirely focused on foreign affairs. As this conflict drags on, this is going to become closer and closer to home.
And Tom, people just want to hear straight answers to straight questions. Boris Johnson, government, energy spokespeople, whoever, what are you going to do about these bills? 3,000 quid by the end of the year in terms of energy bills. That's not taking into account your petrol, diesel costs, that sort of thing. Travelling, because it has to go on to airlines if you ever want that holiday abroad again and whatever. So something's got to be done. Is it going to be the VAT? Is it going to be a delay on the national insurance charge? What practically is going to be done?
Well, as Jonathan Reynolds was mentioning there, the government and the Labour Party are actually now united in a way that they weren't even 10 years ago about nuclear power, for example, and more domestic generation capacity. However, this takes time. We can't just turn on a new nuclear power station tomorrow. We need to build them. We need to fund them. These take years.
Do you see any going back on environmental promises that have been made in the past? It would be very, very embarrassing. But put it like this, I think there would be less protesters about fracking now than there would have been this time last year.
And there's certainly a huge groundswell of support, not least amongst the Parliamentary Conservative Party, for opening up fracking wells in this country, for ending that moratorium on fracking that began in 2017. There's certainly more political pressure for that because the UK sits on so much natural gas. The Business Secretary himself has said that we should be using our North Sea oil and gas reserves. But it seems a bit of a contradiction to use our North Sea gas, but not the gas that we're sitting on in this country as well. So yes, there's political pressure for that. It has to be said the government is not entertaining that so far, but I can only imagine that political pressure will grow and grow as these prices continue to rise.
Just want to know from you guys listening or watching at home, what sort of pressure do you want to bring to bear to reduce the energy prices that you are paying? What would you be prepared to do that or exceed to that you wouldn't maybe this time last year? The Twitter address is @GBNews. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tom, thanks very much indeed.
OK, with the time at 7:24, let's bring you up to date with all the latest headlines. And the International Criminal Court is launching a war crimes investigation into Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It comes after Britain and 37 allies referred Russia over what the Prime Minister described as abhorrent attacks.
Uber is set to offer unlimited free rides between the Ukraine and the Polish border. Now, that service is part of a set of initiatives the American company announced to support Ukraine after the Russian invasion.
In other news this morning, commuters in London are facing the second 24-hour tube strike in a week. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are in a deadlock dispute over jobs, pay and pensions.
Polls are now open in Birmingham-Erdington by-election triggered by the death of the Labour frontbencher Jack Dromey. The former leading trade unionist had represented the constituency for the past 12 years.
Well, as we hit the 1 week mark of the invasion of Ukraine, Russia's begun to feel the squeeze of economic sanctions.
And the value of the ruble has plummeted. Russian central bank has hiked interest rates to prevent a total collapse of the economic system. Joining us now to discuss what that may mean, Andrew Lilico, who is Executive Director for Europe Economics, on all of this one. Where do you see things?
So Putin came to power in the late 1990s off the back of very poor Russian economic performance. So the Russian economy had declined through much of the 1990s. At one stage, it fell to be smaller than Belgium's, so it had fallen something like 80% over the period. And inflation rose to 130% or so. The Russians defaulted on their debts in 1998. So there were these very bad circumstances for Russians, and all the promises of capitalism seemed fairly hollow, along with, of course, a lot of kleptocracy. And then Putin came in, and in the period after he came in, economic growth was quite strong. So, in fact, in quite a few years, quite extended period, Russian growth was around 10%, and it's been pretty consistent over the period. Of course, there was a little downturn at the time of the financial crisis and with COVID, but by and large, he's delivered quite solid economic performance. And that is a key source of his political influence and power. That's what he delivers for his population, and that's what he delivers for his oligarchs. It's entirely plausible that the kinds of sanctions which have been introduced here, inducing a bank run, apparently in Russia, cutting off their access to trade, those could create something like a 20% contraction in GDP. You could have, in addition to that, it might be that inflation goes back above 40% instead of the 10% or so that you've had recently. If that were to be sustained over, say, the next 3 months, that would place Putin's political position very awkward. Another thing about that, of course, is that the Russian economy isn't a huge economy. It's only around the size of Spain's even now, and it isn't going to be able over the longer term to sustain such large military forces if it doesn't have the economic strength. So if Western sanctions bite, they might bite very quickly and have an impact via that way. But if we leave them in place for a decade or something, then the Russian economy will become severely impaired, and that will very greatly undermine the ability of Putin to have such a large military force.
I mean, it's so interesting. Yesterday, the Kremlin was raiding independent newspapers in the country. The words war, attack, invasion have been banned from broadcast. A radio station was taken off air. News websites have been blocked. And a nationwide lesson is being given today across Russia on the danger of NATO. This is being given to Russian children. So the propaganda machine is in full swing within Russia. And yet it will be the ordinary way of life, I suppose, that will be the key to seeing what Putin's really up to. You think it could take up to 10 years before they wake up to it?
Oh, I think that the Russian people are likely to wake up pretty fast. And it's plausible that once the Russian people turn against him, then his oligarchs and his military might turn against him as well. But if they don't, and we end up having to sustain these things, we will resolve some of these matters via the economic squeeze over an extended period of time. So Putin's position is really quite weak at the moment as a consequence of these events. It appears he relied on defeating the Ukrainians quite quickly, or then welcoming him in, or coming to some peace agreement with them that was viable for both sides quite rapidly. And if he doesn't achieve all of that, then the economic consequences for him politically are going to be very significant.
OK, Dr. David Lilico, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Thank you. The time, just coming up to 7:30. We'll take a break there. The latest on the sale of Chelsea Football Club by the owner Roman Abramovic with sports broadcaster Paul Coit right after this. Don't go away. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Paralympics start tomorrow. Paul Coit is with us here because this whole Ukrainian invasion story has so many repercussions in the world of sport. And as regards the Paralympics, the International Paralympic Committee made a ruling yesterday about athletes from member states. They've now reconsidered this and have overruled themselves.
I'm not surprised. It's another one of these situations where it just surely sense has actually prevailed here, but how long it actually takes for this to come out is like the day before the Paralympics. So they were criticised by then saying that this was actually this. They said this is the IPC, the International Paralympic Committee, said that it's the harshest possible punishment in their rule book is actually to tell athletes that they actually have to be neutrals and not represent their country. That's as harsh as it can be. So they said, well, that's in the rule book, that's as far as we can go. Anybody else is looking at that, well, the rule book is ridiculous. Throw out the rule book and do something about it. It seems that other athletes weren't happy. They've probably been pressurised because other athletes from different countries would then start saying, well, we're not going to compete. If they're going to compete, we're not going to compete. With boycotts, especially with the Olympics in the past, it's been countries that have actually called the boycott and it's very difficult to actually give it to the athletes to make that decision because obviously this is something that they've been training for years. Yeah. And then it's very difficult for an athlete to be able to say, well, you know what, I'm not going to compete because of these political reasons, because of what's going on in Ukraine. It shouldn't be left to them. So finally, the IPC have said, right, OK, we've decided that Russians and Belarusians cannot take part in this Olympics, which makes sense.
Yeah. Look, this time yesterday morning, we were talking about rumours swirling of a Swiss billionaire being approached about buying Chelsea. It was later confirmed by Abramovic that he is planning to sell. Yeah, he is planning to sell. Again, I don't think this is a huge surprise either. There's a lot of people that are looking at and thinking, you know, what a lovely gesture that he's doing this for the club, etc. But, I mean, again, do we really buy that? We know what's going on. We know how his links are with Putin as well. This is a man, in my opinion, that is selling the club as quickly as he possibly can before the whole thing is taken away from him. He's going to make money. Again, there's going to be proceeds which will go to victims of the war in Ukraine. It's not really specified who and where, though, is it?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I would read that to be victims on both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah. It could even be victim on one side. On one side. We don't know. Yeah. But it's all very good to be able to say that. Yes. But there's no condemnation of what's going on. There's nothing about Russia. There's nothing about Putin. A charitable foundation will receive net proceeds. But this is a man that, if it does sell for £2.5 billion or whatever it sells for around that area, he's going to make his money back. This is not someone that's actually going to be out of pocket throughout this. Yeah. Right. So it's something that had to happen, and it's obviously happened because he fears what is going on. He's selling his assets and he's scared that they're going to be taken away. Chelsea seems like would be one of those eventually. So let's get out while the going's good.
Everton following Manchester United in laying off Russian sponsors. United have terminated their contract with the Russian state airline Aeroflot.
Yep.
Everton, what are they doing?
Well, it's Usmanov, it's Fahad Mashiri who's the chairman, and it's Alicia Usmanov who works very closely with him, and basically USM Holdings, Megaphone and Yotta. There's a lot of money that's going into Everton. Usmanov has actually sponsored the training ground. There's a lot of money, and also they're probably thinking, well, a lot of money was going to come to them from him because there's a new stadium that's being built as well. Naming rights, etc. How that's going to affect Everton and how it's going to affect the whole situation, we are yet to see. But it's a lot of money that now won't be coming into the club.
Very prominent Ukrainian staying in his country. Not to box, but to join the armed forces.
Yeah, Alexander Usyk, yeah. I mean, we're talking about a world champion. I mean, this is the best boxer on the planet as far as heavyweight's concerned, but he's going back to fight as well. Again, it was something we were talking about yesterday. Is he actually going out there to fight? I'm sure he's absolutely prepared for that, but he's going home. So, yeah, I mean, as far as the future of his boxing is concerned, yeah, that's not even what he's thinking about. He's going back to his homeland.
So he's joining the army.
Yeah.
Yeah, OK. He says there's just bafflement. How could this be in the 21st century? Which sums up what a lot of people...
Everybody seems to be saying the same thing.
So there'd be no rematch. I mean, there'd be talk about a rematch between him and Anthony Joshua, who he beat last September.
Yep.
But obviously all of that is put on hold.
Of course it is. Of course it's going to be put on hold in the meantime. There was no date for that anyway. There was all the talk about Tyson Fury and Derek Chisora fighting, which is happening in the next couple of months, which sold out, by the way, yesterday very, very quickly. As far as Usyk and as far as Joshua's concerned, well, that was up in the air. But in the meantime, well, obviously he's got much bigger things to deal with and much more important things to worry about.
OK, Paul Coyte, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
OK, with the time 7:37, we'll be reflecting the fact it is 1 year today since the kidnapping of Sarah Everard, and we'll be looking at how her death has led to an improvement in women's safety measures. That's straight after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Nearly 20 minutes to 8 on this Thursday morning. Wherever you're listening or watching, a very good morning to you. Welcome to breakfast here on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Time now to take a look at your newspaper front pages. The Daily Telegraph reporting that the southern city of Kherson has become the first in Ukraine to fall to the Russians 1 week on from the invasion.
Moving on to the Times, leading with the destruction of schools and hospitals. Putin continues his barrage of Ukraine, they say.
Here's The Guardian is discussing the Ukrainian president's warning that Russia wants to erase the people of Ukraine.
The Eyes headline simply says, "Welcome to hell."
Clear-Offsky is the headline from The Sun as the Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich puts Chelsea Football Club up for sale.
And looking inside the newspapers this morning, the political editor for The Sun on Sunday, David Wooding, and business expert Kate Hardcastle. Very good morning to both of you. And David, it's you we're beginning with. The Telegraph, the front page. Putin commanders. Tell us more.
Well, there's lots of stories in all the papers, obviously, about the war this morning. But this one leapt out at me. That Dominic Raab's given an interview, that this is the Justice Secretary, to the Daily Telegraph, in which he says that the commanders of the war, Russian commanders, will be hunted down and put on trial in the International Criminal Court. Now, yeah, you might just say, well, that's just a threat. But in fact, it does lay down an important marker that all these culprits of this invasion will be held to account at a later date.
Think about what you're doing. I like the quote where Raab says, "We must lay down a marker now for Putin and any commander who may be thinking about what he's going to do with an illegal order." So, you know, they're encouraging dissent within the ranks.
Yes, absolutely. And Dominic Raab was involved in previous international war crimes work. He's a lawyer in his own right before he became a politician. And he says that Britain, because of previous conflicts, has the expertise to track these people down and put them on trial. And they're already working on it now.
And this is as the ICC has opened that war crimes investigation.
And in fact, in the Commons yesterday, the Prime Minister actually said that this war crimes have been committed by Putin and his regime.
I'm glad you mentioned the Commons yesterday, because extraordinary scenes and very uplifting scenes in a way, where during Prime Minister question there was a standing ovation for the Ukrainian ambassador. Let's see what happened. I think that was very inspiring and very, very dignified, and very good for us, because we, of course, had the ambassador live on this programme.
Yeah, the Ukrainian ambassador,
2 weeks ago.
Vadim Prystaiko, came into the studio and spoke to both Eamonn and me on this very programme. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
We have 250 in the army, another 300 in territorial unit defense. Our reserve is up to 2 million people. You know, it seems like big, serious numbers. We are lacking some very serious capacities, like anti-air, for example, or fleet, which was seized in Crimea when the Russian attacked in 2014. So there are some capabilities which we are still missing, but we will definitely put up a very real fight, and Russians know it.
He would have left, David, with a feeling that it's not just words from the home of parliaments.
No.
Were you there, David?
Well, yes, I was in the Commons yesterday, and I sit in there most days watching debates, and those moments, I can tell you, are few and far between. It is theatre every week at Prime Minister's questions, when they joust across the dispatch box and catcall, and there's jeering and yaboo. But there are moments like that when it does send a tingle down your spine. I mean, you don't hear applause in the Commons. It's not convention to applaud. You say hear, hear. But when you do hear applause on those sort of occasions, you notice it. I think the last time we had applause was when Tony Blair made his farewell speech. That would have been in 2007. So it's quite a long time ago since we heard that. It was one of those moments.
It was. You're totally right. Spine-tingling moment indeed. I want to bring in Kate Hardcastle and turn our attention to page 1 of the business section in the Telegraph. And we were talking about this on the programme yesterday as the huge impact on the Russian economy of all of the sanctions, but a lot of British businesses pulling out now as well.
So there's many stories across the papers this morning, and as I said earlier, this absolutely doesn't take away from the civilians and the real life story of this, but business is business, and it is a financial impact for so many elements, and so many stories talking about the businesses that just have to cease trading, that don't know if they're going to get paid, don't feel like that's the right thing to do anymore from the PR industry, big businesses that just aren't compatible with how they want to proceed with their Russian entities, so JCB, Burberry, ASOS all pulling out. They're joining Mercedes-Benz, ExxonMobil, Apple. And then we've also got organisations beyond that, I think, that are doing above and beyond. You know, organisations like Airbnb who have offered free rooms for people. And I think there's the organisations that are seeing that actually they have power to make change. So there's a huge set of news stories coming from the business industry. I mean, also we've got to think about the financial element. We have to understand, you know, a huge piece in the FT today talking about that Russian investment that came in when US started to turn up some of the challenges, some of the sanctions to that Russian investment. It did come into the UK. They've put a worth of £300 billion on that. And then how that now has started to affect what they've called the Kremlin gremlins, but the markets in terms of that investment, and then how it reflects in terms of the world stage. So it's complex. It's really interesting for someone in business. I was in a big business meeting last night with a lot of huge experts in different industries talking about what's the right thing to do. What they know first and foremost is absolutely they have to make themselves be heard. They have to be accountable to their stakeholders and their consumers. And most of all, I think, Isabel, is they have to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Well, you keep saying do the right thing. That's very interesting. And in this woke world, where these big corporations are ruled by wokeness, they wet their pants literally if someone says anything unwoke about them or accuses them of anything on social media. It sends out a big message. I'm surprised they're all not out. For instance, Marks and Spencer's, 24 stores in Moscow. What a statement that would be, not just in terms of trading, but that not open for business, closed, the doors taped up. What would that say to Russian people?
All I will say is, and I know there's a lot of stories to cover this morning, when COVID hit, the lockdowns, the pandemic, a seabed of issues came to the forefront for business. Diversity and inclusion, environment, ethical, stakeholder engagement, a lot of things they are dealing with that are from generations before. You call it woke, I call it doing the right thing. The fact of the matter is, it will always be governed by cash, and consumers are now wanting more from the businesses they invest with. So you can call it just commercial, actually. If consumers call for action, that's what they want.
Too many of them have this, oh, we're so good and we're so woke and we're so wonderful about things. But it's about the buck at the end of the day. It's about their bottom lines. People aren't blind. People see it in adverts. People aren't stupid what way they're being fed, the messages that they're being fed. And that these big companies, they rule television companies, they rule the advertising in newspapers. They decide what goes on, and it is their world. I will call it woke.
Consumers want a better deal. They watch all those COP26 adverts in October about environmental practices.
Yeah.
If that isn't delivered with authenticity the month after, they're not going to stand for it anymore. They're not going to go, OK, yes, we believe all that. They're going to challenge back. And that's the world that business is in now. And I agree with you. I think the reason we're getting reactions so quickly, we're seeing those flags so quickly, is because they know the pressure is on.
Yeah, and as you say, you started by saying, you know, this doesn't take away from the civilians and the human tragedies that we're seeing. A lot of people feeling helpless and that they can't, and frustrated in many ways that we aren't doing more to stop the Russian invasion. And I suppose this is the small way in which, you know, people can make a difference is through businesses and through doing the right thing.
Are truly good businesses. There are some good business leaders out there.
There's so much we could talk about, David. I want to finish on this dog disagreement. Tell us the story behind this. This is in The Sun, page 25.
Yes, there's a couple of doggy stories here, and these are pampered pooches of the highest order. So you've got one which is where a dog has been fed sirloin steak, and it's led to a domestic row of such intensity that a restraining order has been granted against the husband who came home and found the wife feeding sirloin steak to the two pooches. Above it, incidentally, and much also a nice story is about a dog which has gone on 70 flights for an Instagram account, and it's been pictured on tropical islands and Paris and the Rocky Mountains, Mexico, everywhere. So some of our dogs are getting treated better than...
Does the dog get a seat, or is it in the
Yes,
hole?
it gets a seat. Apparently this dog, the owner books 2 extra seats and packs a caseload of meat for the 4 dogs.
Have you ever seen a dog in a seat?
No. Not in a seat. No, I've seen them in the airports, but I need to start picking more dog stories. Clearly, that's what I've learned from this morning. Isabel, help me here.
I know.
Right.
Pick a cat story and I'll go to you every time.
It's now 10 minutes before 8 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed,
thank you
David
both.
and Kate. Who'll be back in about 45 minutes' time.
OK, now, when Sarah Everard was killed by a serving Metropolitan Police officer on this day 1 year ago, it sent shockwaves, quite rightly, up and down the country. Well, Ellie Costello is on Clapham Common, where Sarah Everard was taken from. And we can speak to her this morning. Ellie, people paying tributes this morning to Sarah Everard?
Yes, good morning, Isabel and Eamonn. A very sad, very quiet morning here on Clapham Common. And I'm not sure if you can see just behind me, but the first tributes have just started to be laid for Sarah Everard. A gentleman just came up a few moments ago and placed that bouquet there, that pink and white bouquet. And I spoke to him about why he wanted to leave the flowers. He said he had to do something for Sarah. He's got 2 daughters that live nearby and he wanted to pay his respects. I'm sure those are the kinds of scenes that we're going to see in Clapham Common today on the 1 year anniversary since Sarah Everard went missing. We know now that she was killed as well. Well, we are expecting small vigils in Clapham Common today, and we have also received a statement from her family via the Metropolitan Police. Hopefully you can see it on your screens now. It says, "It's been a year since Sarah died, and we remember her today, as every day, with all of our love. Our lives have changed forever and we will live with the sadness of our loss. Sarah was wonderful and we miss her all the time. Over the past year, we have been overwhelmed with the kindness shown to us, not just by family and friends, but by the wider public. Sadly, Sarah is not the only woman to have lost her life recently in violent circumstances, and we'd like to extend our deepest sympathy to other families who are also grieving." Well, Eamonn and Isabel, that's the statement from the family. And this was a case that completely shocked the country and indeed the world. If you cast your mind back to March last year, we were in lockdown. We were under COVID-19 restrictions, and Sarah was visiting a friend in Clapham, not too far from here, and she was walking home to her house in Brixton. It was a walk that was supposed to take an hour. And I think what resonated so much with people around the world was that Sarah was doing everything that she was supposed to do in order to keep herself safe. She was wearing practical clothing, she was wearing trainers, she stuck to the main road, and she even called her boyfriend. I think what angered and upset so many women was the fact that even in the 21st century, women cannot leave one destination and be guaranteed to arrive at their destination. It is a really sad day here on Clapham Common, and we will be expecting tributes here all day.
OK, Ellie, thank you very much indeed. Well, the tragic murder of Sarah Everard really shone a light on the issue of women's safety. And I'm pleased to say we're now joined by Emma Kay. She's the co-founder of an app called Walk Safe. Good morning to you. Tell us a little bit about your app.
So first of all, I want to be able to say it's a very sad day, and our hearts go out to Sarah Everard and her family at this really difficult time. We are the app that we believe shouldn't have to exist. We've been downloaded over 500,000 times, and ultimately we have 3 main safety features. We have our Walk Safe map, which enables you to plan safer routes and really understand the crime within your area. We also have our Home Safe feature, which if you fail to get home on time, a last known location gets sent to your loved ones. And we have our Tap Safe, for if you're feeling nervous when out and about, you can tap to let your loved one know. And if anything should happen, a last known location gets sent to your loved one.
Well, that's a fantastic tool for women to use to keep safe. Do you think it could have helped Sarah Everard if she'd had access to it?
Yes, I think that the reason why we created it was to try and help inform and empower women, to give them the knowledge that they truly need to be able to keep themselves safer by learning about crime within their local areas. But at the end of the day, Sarah was doing everything right. Sarah could have been myself. Sarah could have been my sister. She could have been a loved one. What happened to her is truly tragic. And like I said, our hearts just go out to her family today. It is a very sad day.
Yeah, Emma Kay, when it comes to the issue of stranger danger, you know, those really rare attacks, but by somebody that you've never met, disproportionately women are the victims of those kinds of murders. I've covered so many crimes as my role as a reporter over the years, so many tragic murders of young women. Have we become a safer country in the last year since the death of Sarah Everard, do you think?
I still feel like we've got such a long way to go. I would like to see violence against women and girls becoming a strategic requirement. So really elevating that to the sort of level of child abuse or terrorism, so it gets the funding and resource that it truly deserves. I feel that we're trying. For instance, the Met have brought out the Street Safe initiative and the Walk and Talk initiative. I mean, we're heading in the right direction, but I feel that it just falls flat. And I feel that we're just being paid lip service at the end of the day. It's just not enough.
What's your reaction been to the misogyny, so many of the things that have been exposed going on within not just the Metropolitan Police, but police forces up and down the country? Do you think that there is a problem coming from the top? And of course, Wayne Couzens was himself a Metropolitan Police officer.
Yes, I feel that we need to be looking into this. It does need to be investigated. I do feel that it was so shocking and it disturbed everyone to our core. We really do need to be tackling misogyny at all forms head on, and that still does mean the police, you're right, that they need to be held accountable.
And yet we're still hearing of women disappearing the streets. Sabina Nessa having been the most high profile that I can think of in the capital since Sarah Everard died. And I suppose there will always be that fear. Women will always have to look over their shoulder. And that just seems so wrong, doesn't it?
Totally. I mean, this is the reason why I created Walk Safe, was I am that girl. I do know how it feels. I have been catcalled, I've been groped, I've been followed. I know what it feels like to feel unsafe. And all the while that we feel this way, there will be a need for my app. And I really hope that by having something out there in the big wide world, which is free to use, that women can feel a little bit comforted that they've done something to make themselves feel a little bit more informed when they're walking out alone at night.
OK, Emma Kay, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Emma Kay came up with this Walk Safe app that 500,000 people have now downloaded to try and make women feel safe as they make their way home in the UK. And of course it is, as we started off that interview by saying, the anniversary of the death of Sarah Everard. She was murdered a year ago today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With that, we will hit the break, and then coming up in the next hour, closer look at the Russian oligarchs around President Putin. We will see you right after this. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The main headline you're waking up to on this Thursday is...
The first Ukrainian city has reportedly fallen to the Russians a week after the start of Russia's invasion. We'll be asking, is it all over between the oligarchs and President Putin?
So good morning to you. 8 o'clock is the time. Just on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. You're watching and listening to us right around the world, whether on the GB News app, whether on YouTube or on your television or radio station DAB+. You're very, very welcome.
So our headlines this morning: the International Criminal Court is launching a war crimes investigation into Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It comes after Britain and 37 allies referred Russia over what the Prime Minister described as abhorrent attacks.
Uber is set to offer unlimited free rides between Ukraine and the Polish border. The service is part of a set of initiatives the American company announced to support Ukraine after the Russian invasion. We're going to get an update now of what has been happening, the very latest from our security correspondent, Mark White.
Well, the situation is still very confused on the ground. We've been getting reports of the city of Kherson having fallen to the Russians, but we are not sure that that is actually the case, because the UK Ministry of Defence say the situation on the ground is rather confused. A local official, I think it was the mayor of Kherson, had reported that troops had entered the city hall there. They're certainly on the ground. Images have been emerging of Russian forces gingerly picking their way through the port city of Kherson, which is in the south of Ukraine. But as far as actually having full control of it, they may have, but there's a lot of resistance in that town, a lot of resistance in other Ukrainian towns and cities like Kharkiv, the second largest city in the northeast of Ukraine, and also the city of Mariupol, another strategic port city on the Sea of Azov. It is very difficult going, of course, for the Russian forces, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. They have been carrying out their own intelligence analysis. They've got assets in the region, they've got their satellite imagery, and they are in constant contact with the the Ukrainian military forces as they continue to fight on and resist the Russian invasion. And they suggest that this armoured convoy, which is significantly north of the Ukrainian capital, is still there, about 30 kilometres or so, making very slow progress in recent days. That progress may have been hampered, according to the UK Ministry of Defence, by logistical issues, the lack of fuel, food, ammunition, and indeed also resistance from Ukrainian fighters in Kiev as well.
Thanks very much indeed.
Here's James Nixie. James is director of the Russia and Eurasia programme at Chatham House. James, good morning to you. Foreign policy-wise, how best can this situation be de-escalated, or has it gone well beyond that point now?
I'm afraid you're right. There's no chance that the negotiations, which are due to restart again today, are going to be the way out of this, because the same is true now as it was, frankly, 6 months or even 6 years ago. But the two sides have irreconcilable differences. The reality is that Ukraine wants to be a sovereign, independent state, and Russia demands control over that state. Those two things, you can't square that circle. So I'm afraid to say but we're going to be in this, what is the largest ground invasion of a country since 1939 to 45 for quite some time to come. And to be honest with you, we're still at the very beginning of this war. I'm sorry not to put a better gloss on it than that.
UN General Assembly yesterday voting overwhelmingly to deplore this invasion. Really quite meaningless?
I think that it is important that we show that Russia has no friends. I mean, apart from Belarus, if you like, and the occasional African country such as Eritrea. But for the most part, the reality is that whilst Russia had some allies, even prior to this invasion, then nobody can possibly support Russia for what it would mean for their own sovereignty. They see the ramifications. They see where this could go globally. And so I think that the UN, though toothless in many ways, though unable to actually prevent a war, it does have the power of showing how isolated that Russia is. And that is important because every bit of pressure on Moscow can help.
Where does this end for Putin?
The end game is a tricky one here. And I think for Putin, personally, he is in a must-win situation. No Russian leader loses a war and survives it. The problem is, of course, and you're well aware of this from the news of the last few days, is that he's painted himself into a corner, but holding a nuclear button. And so obviously we have to worry that if he loses, then if he sees himself as losing, then he resorts to the most desperate of measures. Now, I don't think that's necessarily the way this is going to work out, but the reality is that Putin must win this militarily to have any chance of political survival, and that's what Putin's all about, as well as the accumulation of wealth and the gathering of Russian lands, which we're seeing now. But I think that the problem is that both sides must win. If the West doesn't win, then the West is finished in a certain way as well. The rules-based international order, as we understand it, the Westphalian order, whatever you want to call it, that's finished too. Article 5 comes under threat, even though Ukraine isn't a part of it. So if both sides must win, and yet at the same time it's impossible for them to lose because it would mean they're toast in some ways, then I think again you're in this very sticky situation where you're relying on negotiations which, as I say, can't work because of irreconcilable differences, which means you've got to slog it out and hope that it's a conventional ground warfare. And let's be perfectly honest here, although we know that Ukraine has mounted incredibly impressive resistance, then the Russian forces are still numerically vastly superior, and they can take Ukraine eventually, by albeit very bloodily. And so we're looking at the very question of the survival of Ukraine.
James, in your position there at Chatham House, can you envisage a Russia without Putin? What would it look like? Would it be much different?
That's really interesting, and we've been asking ourselves this for almost 22 years. That's how long he's been in power. And of course, no one lasts forever, but most general secretaries of the Soviet Union were carried out in coffins by and large. They didn't retire, or a couple were deposed, such as Khrushchev. But the reality is that there's not really a succession mechanism in a dictatorship such as Russia. He's 69 this year. Sorry, no, he's 69 now. He's 70 this year. And he must be thinking about his legacy. And the result, and that's probably at least part of the reason which has pushed him to do this right now. As for what comes next, I think it would be very unsafe to assume that what comes after Putin is better than Putin. The least likely option for Russia, I'm very sorry to say, is that post-Putin we see some kind of nice, cozy liberal democracy. So I'm afraid that much as it would be preferable, and we shouldn't be fearful of what comes after Putin, and so we must keep him in place for fear of what comes next. Then at the same time, those lined up in succession to come afterwards, and there's a pool or a squad of 7 or 8 of them who are possibles, are no more friendly, no more pro-Western, and just as nationalistic as Vladimir Putin himself, I'm sorry to say.
Because, of course, Vladimir Putin's most vocal critic, Alexei Navalny, has been jailed. And I just wonder, are you worried for him? I mean, yesterday from jail, he was getting messages out saying that Putin was a clearly insane little Tsar, that a price must be paid, people should not fear being jailed, that people must fight for peace. Do you think that that's going to cost him?
Alexei Navalny's life has been under threat for probably about 10 years now, and indeed he has almost been killed, as you know, with a Novichok poisoning in the far east of Russia just a couple of years ago. It is, frankly, every day there's the possibility that he would he would undergo an accident, in quotes, in prison. And it does seem to me that the more that he embarrasses the government, and he's still able to from behind bars, which is incredible, but he's a very brave man. I mean, he's a person who voluntarily went back to Russia in the full knowledge that he would be incarcerated for, pretty much ad infinitum. So I think, but the problem is, all at the same time, is the rest of Russia's opposition. There are some very brave people in Russia. I mean, the Liberal Party head, Grigory Yavlinsky, the former prime minister, even Mikhail Kasyanov. I mean, they are outspoken vocal critics, but they are completely impotent. They have no airtime, and I'm afraid there's no chance of them succeeding Vladimir Putin.
James Nixie, thank you so much for your take on things. James is director of the Russia and Eurasia programme at Chatham House. Let's now speak to Con McLaughlin. If you go to the Daily Telegraph today, Con has a feature there where he's talking about the oligarchs surrounding Vladimir Putin and how the whole thing works. You've heard what James had to say there, Con, as well. And we were trying to envisage a Russia post Putin. He says it may not be that much different.
Well, I think James has made some good points there. And I think, as he said, in this sort of almost czarist system that you have in Moscow, they don't really think much about successions. Once you get the job, you're there for life. But, I think this move into Ukraine is not very popular within the sort of ruling establishment in Moscow. And as I write in the Telegraph today, the fact that some of the most prominent oligarchs in Russia, people who've been known as Putin loyalists over the last 20 years, are now making muted criticisms. They're not directly attacking Putin, but they are certainly raising questions about whether the invasion of Ukraine is the right policy. And I find this quite fascinating. I mean, the whole Kremlinology of what is going on in Russia is one of the backstories to the terrible events unfolding in Ukraine. And when the oligarchs, I think that there's a figure I saw, there's 116 billionaires that control a vast amount of Russia's wealth. This is a very important constituency in Russia. And when they express reservations about what's going on in Ukraine, and when you've got people like Roman Abramovich, the current owner of Chelsea, soon not to be, going on his own private diplomatic mission to try and end the fighting, then you start to see cracks in the edifice, which, if nothing else, are fascinating.
You've picked up on that in your piece in the Telegraph today. I've also spotted a couple of lines on it in the Mail today, and this is based on his private jet records, the flight path being tracked from, I think, the south of France to the Belarusian border, where those peace talks were being held on Monday, and then on to the Kremlin. Really interesting position for him then, a unique position, I suppose, as one of the oligarchs, because, of course, he's a fiercely loyal ally of Putin. He's never, even now, spoken out in criticism of him, and yet he has the trust of Zelensky. Just tell us why.
Well, one of the sort of lesser-known aspects of Roman Abramovich's activities is he's a very prominent campaigner against anti-Semitism. He comes from a Jewish family, and also the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, is Jewish, and some of his family perished in the Ukrainian Holocaust. So there is a sort of religious link there. And Zelensky trusts Abramovich. You have to remember, I mean, one of the tragedies of this conflict in Ukraine is that it's a bit like England going to war with Wales. I mean, the ties between Russia and Ukraine are very deep. They are like brothers. And so you have this bizarre situation where you have somebody, a prominent member of the Kremlin's inner circle, Roman Abramovich, having a very close personal bond with the president of Ukraine, who technically is the sworn enemy of Moscow. So it's a bizarre situation. But you do have Abramovich moving into this position where he's trying to use his connections to try and diffuse tensions. Now, what happens when he goes to the Kremlin and says to Putin, if he saw Putin, we don't even know that he saw Putin, But if he goes to the Kremlin and says, look, I've spoken to Zelensky, he's prepared to do X, Y, and Z to end this conflict, is he making any headway? So, and I'd also say, the British government and others are drawing up new lists of oligarchs to sanction and everything else. But if you've got somebody like Abramovic who can be a useful interlocutor to end this war, then is it right to hit them with sanctions and isolate them?
Is that why, then, do you think that the Prime Minister was evasive in his response to Keir Starmer and PMQs yesterday about why Abramovic isn't being chased in terms of sanctions?
Well, I think there's an element of that, actually. And the Labour Party, of course, as the official opposition, will be looking for any chink of weakness in the government's armour. And one of the things they've been arguing over the last few days is that the measures proposed by the British government with regard to the oligarchs are not strong enough, they don't go far enough, there's still too much dirty Russian money sloshing around London, etc. But I think, yes, you saw the Prime Minister give a rather more nuanced response when directly challenged about Abramovic. I think Abramovic has indicated that so far as his future is concerned, it will not be in the UK. He's put Chelsea up for sale. He's going to sell his vast mansion in Kensington, and he'll be off elsewhere. And that is one of the consequences of this appalling action by Putin.
But let's talk about Putin. If these oligarchs between them decide the best interests of Russia, or indeed the best interests of their wealth, is not served by Vladimir Putin, who actually tells them, Con? Because we're dealing with not only a terrorist here, we're dealing with a mafiosa leader, we're dealing with a gangster here. Who would actually have the guts or the wherewithal or the backup, the muscle to tell him?
Well, that is the $64,000 question, Eamonn. The thing about Putin, and I've been watching him for 20-odd years, I actually met him when he first became president in St. Petersburg in 2001. And since then, he has very cleverly and efficiently suppressed all the opposition, all his rivals, so that, as you say, he's now the supreme mafia don in Moscow. And you just showed that picture of him sitting with his defense minister and the chief of the Russian armed forces. They are forced to sit 20 feet away from him. So, they are trained soldiers. If they want to take a swipe at him, that possibility has been denied just by the himself. And he is surrounded by yes men, lots of loyalists from his old days in the parts of the Kremlin, parts to dislodge. I suspect it wouldn't be the oligarchs, it would be the military that moved in if there were to be a palace coup.
OK, well, you're witnessing, and you write today about a level of dissent, whatever that level is, rearing its head. Con, if you had a crystal ball in front of you there, what would your prediction be? How long is he likely to last? As we say, he turned 70 this year. He's got all the money he could want or need, probably in the hands of his oligarch friends. What's the future for him?
Well, as I said, I think the reason I just outlined, Eamonn, I think it's very difficult to see him being ousted, but I see him becoming a rather sad Mugabe figure. Remember, Mugabe in Zimbabwe hung on for years and years as his whole country collapsed around him. And I can see this happening to Russia, that because it's very difficult to deal with a mafia don, you will see Russia, as these sanctions bite, as its isolation deepens, just become a failed state. And you will have a failed president running a failed state, still living this deluded life that he's the head of Imperial Russia.
Gosh, how depressing.
So
but
depressing.
What an insight, Con. Yeah, but, it's just fascinating to talk to you because you have that insight and, as you say, history often repeats itself as well. Fascinating talking to you, Con. Good article, great article from him in the Daily Telegraph today. Thank you very much indeed. Con Glocklin is the Defence and Foreign Affairs Editor at the Daily Telegraph.
OK, with the time at 8:19, let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. And the International Criminal Court is launching a war crimes investigation into Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It comes after Britain and 37 allies referred Russia over what the Prime Minister described as abhorrent attacks.
Uber is set to offer unlimited free rides between Ukraine and the Polish border. The service is part of a set of initiatives the American company announced to support Ukraine after the Russian invasion.
Russian and Belarusian athletes will no longer be allowed to compete at the Winter Paralympics in Beijing. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to let them compete under a neutral flag after it was met by fierce criticism and the threat of a boycott.
Just looking at London there, Londoners face this second 24-hour tube strike in a week, and it is causing a lot of disruption. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are deadlocked in a dispute over jobs, pay and pensions.
Polls are now open in the Birmingham-Erdington by-election triggered by the death of the Labour frontbencher Jack Dromey. The former leading trade unionist had represented the constituency since 2010.
With the time at 8:20, we'll take a break, and then 1 year on, we're looking back at the tragic murder of Sarah Everard. That to come after the weather forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. A dull and damp start for most of us. Frost-free, however, with the extensive cloud overnight, and then it does turn a little brighter in some places later this afternoon. But at the moment, there's a weather front crossing the country, very slowly because it's coming up against high pressure to the east, and it's a weakening feature. However, it is bringing an extensive area of cloud and outbreaks of rain to Scotland, western parts of England, as well as Wales. Hill fog as well, but that area of cloud and rain narrowing, and so it's less extensive by the afternoon, and that means that parts of eastern England will brighten up. Plenty of sunshine here, highs of 10 to 13 Celsius. Where it's raining across central parts of the country, 9 or 10 degrees. But by the end of the afternoon, West Wales, Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Southwest England also sees brighter skies developing to the rear of the front, and a few showers starting to arrive. Most of those showers stay offshore overnight and inland, I think, for Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest under clear skies. A touch of frost is possible, also for East Anglia. But away from those areas, we keep the cloud, we keep those outbreaks of rain going, very slowly edging east, so that it's the eastern Scotland, northeast England, into the Midlands and the southeast where we'll see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain during Friday morning. The rain tending to be on and off, but it will be fairly persistent for eastern Scotland, northeast England, and it will be falling as snow over the tops of the Grampians. Brighter weather, meanwhile, for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, western England. Temperatures typically up at 9 or 10 degrees in the south, 7 to 8 degrees further north. Those temperatures head slightly downwards during Saturday and Sunday, but at the same time, most places will see the weather turn drier and brighter, albeit with just 1 or 2 showers.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious.
News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
This is Breakfast, as Eamonn was saying. We're live on your TV and radio this morning, and we are talking today about the first anniversary of Sarah Everard's murder. She was, of course, killed by a serving Metropolitan Police officer, and it sent shockwaves up and down the country.
Well, let's go to our South East of England reporter, Ellie Costello, who joins us now from Clapham Common, Ellie, and that's where Sarah was last seen, and where tributes are being led. Tell us more.
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. A very sad day here on Clapham Common, and a day of reflection too, a year on from the abduction and the murder of Sarah Everard, who, as you rightly say, Eamonn, was last seen on the road just over here, just on the outside of Clapham Common, and that's where she was abducted by the serving Metropolitan Police officer, Wayne Couzens. So we have started to see the first few tributes being laid here at Clapham Common bandstand. We've also received a statement from the Everard family today. It came through the Metropolitan Police and it reads, "It is a year since Sarah died, and we remember her today, as every day, with all of our love. Our lives have changed forever, and we live with the sadness of our loss. Sarah was wonderful, and we miss her all the time. Over the past year, we have been overwhelmed with the kindness shown to us, not just by family and friends, but by the wider public." They go on to say that, sadly, Sarah is not the only woman to have lost her life recently in violent circumstances, and we'd like to extend our deepest sympathy to other families who are also grieving. Now, Eamonn and Isabel, if you cast your mind back to last year, to March, we were still in lockdown. It was still COVID-19 restrictions, and Sarah was visiting a friend in Clapham, not too far from the Common, and she was walking home to Brixton. It was a walk that was supposed to take an hour. Now, we know that she was stopped by Wayne Couzens, and she was falsely arrested by him under COVID-19 restrictions, and thankfully that was picked up by the CCTV of a London bus that was passing. Wayne Couzens then proceeded to put Sarah Everard in his car and drove her to Kent, where he raped and murdered her.
Yeah, you know, hearing that statement from Sarah's parents, Ellie, I'm reminded just how dignified they've been throughout the whole thing. So traumatic for them. And you talk about the bandstand behind you. That was the site of many of the tributes, because, as you say, so many people were horrified by what happened to Sarah. What's the mood like in Clapham this morning? A very popular part of South London, particularly with young people. Are there any tributes being laid today?
Hi, Isabel. Yes, it's a really sad and reflective mood in Clapham Common today. We have had the first flowers that have started to be laid there, and I think this is what surprises so many people about this case. Is if you haven't been to Clapham before, it's a really leafy residential part of London. It's nicknamed Little Surrey. Lots of young professionals like Sarah live here, and that was which was so shocking about this case, that Sarah was walking home at 9 p.m. at night. She was sticking to the main roads. She was wearing sensible clothes. She was wearing trainers. She rang her boyfriend, and still she didn't get home safely. And we know that she was abducted and killed by a serving Metropolitan Police officer. And what shocks so many people is Wayne Couzens was somebody that was supposed to be there to protect her as a police officer. But we know from hearing in court that he actually planned the abduction for days ahead, that he arrested Sarah Everard using using his warrant card and using his handcuffs as well. So it really was an awful ordeal for poor Sarah, and that's what people have been remarking on in Clapham Common today. A man about an hour ago just placed flowers there and said he had to do something for Sarah. He's got daughters that live nearby and he wanted to pay his respects, and I'm sure that we are going to see lots of people paying respects here at the bandstand. And as you say, Isabel, this is the place where a vigil was held for Sarah Everard on the 13th of March last year, and the Metropolitan Police were criticised at the time for their heavy-handed nature of dealing with that vigil. 4 people were arrested there under COVID-19 regulations, and there was rightly so much sadness and anger amongst the women and men that went to that vigil, because we knew at the time that a serving Metropolitan Police officer was being held in connection with Sarah's disappearance and murder, and we know now that Wayne Couzens did plead guilty to the abduction, the rape and the murder of Sarah Everard, and he is now serving a very rare whole life sentence in prison, which means he will die in jail, and they are very, very rare in this country. Following that vigil here on the 13th of March, there was a report from the Independent Office for Police Misconduct, and they found that misogyny, discrimination, bullying and sexual harassment were uncovered in all ranks of the Metropolitan Police. And the Commissioner for the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, actually resigned just last month, Eamonn and Isabel. So we're still feeling the shockwaves from this case that really did call into question not only women's safety but also women's trust in the police as well. So a very sad day on Clapham Common, and I'm sure we're going to see tributes continue to be laid throughout the day.
Yeah.
Okay, Ellie, thank you for that. Ellie Costello live there from Clapham Common on this, the first anniversary of the abduction and murder of Sarah Everard, just after 8:30. Coming up, we're going to be joined by David Wooding and Kate Hardcastle. They've got the papers. They'll be reading them, so you don't have to after this. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The pages of the papers, the front pages of the papers dominated by Ukraine. Daily Telegraph reports that the southern city of Kherson has become the first in the country to fall to the Russian army.
The Times is leading with the destruction of schools and hospitals as Putin continues to barrage civilians in Ukraine.
Guardian's headline discusses the the Ukrainian president's warning that Russia wants to erase his people, the people of Ukraine.
The Eye's headline simply says, "Welcome to hell."
Here's the Sun. Clearovsky is the message loud and clear as Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich puts Chelsea Football Club up for sale. Well, let's discuss all of this and much, much more from the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, David Wooding, and business expert Kate Hardcastle. Good to see both of you. David, where's the story heading now? Because to keep it topical, to keep it on those front pages without people becoming disinterested in it, but I think we haven't remotely got to that stage yet.
No, a lot of the difficulty for the newspapers in covering this war is that a lot of these incursions and bombardments happen in the small hours.
Yes.
So by the time the papers hit the streets, the agenda has sometimes changed. Like overnight, we've had that attack on that big city, which is dominating the news this morning. But there's lots of different aspects.
The big human interest aspect.
Yeah,
of
I mean, we've seen the big story the papers have done today. They've done the story about Roman Abramovic, which is an important domestic story about the screw being turned on Russians, and then we've got that story about the young Russian soldiers. Reports from the front line of the young Russian soldiers who are barely 20, who are being linked up with their parents on the mobile phone. The Metro, for instance, here has got has focused on the president of Ukraine, who's really rocketing in the public esteem.
Yeah.
I think Vladimir Zelensky, who's saying that it's united Ukraine as one, and he's talking about the spirit of the Ukraine people. And that's quite an interesting angle.
Yeah,
too.
we've got an interview with his political advisor coming on the show a little bit later on in the programme. But a couple of the newspapers this morning also featuring the newborn baby, the latest baby to be born in a makeshift maternity ward, which is in a bomb shelter underneath the capital, Kiev.
And life trying to go on whilst actually there is so much threat. And I think we are acutely aware that this is a moving story. Constantly we're getting news reports from brilliant journalism showing us the true reality of what's going on out there.
Does this move you as a mum, Kate?
Incredibly, because you feel helpless. The first natural reaction as a parent, as just I hope, a decent human being, which is what I try to be, is you want to go and help and do more. But I feel vulnerable because I had very challenging pregnancy, very challenging birth circumstances, and I absolutely know what it's like to have top medical care in a very sanitised environment, and you want to make sure that for that life that you've carried and protected for 9 months, you want to give the best start in life, and look at that environment, look at that front page. But what I would say is, we're talking about many different facets of this, talking about the business side of it. We're also talking about the cost of living here. Eamonn and Isabel, just only a few weeks ago we were just talking about that fuel impact that's going to come in to families, and now that is scaling higher and higher and higher too, because of this challenge of us buying fuel in this open market. And even though we have a very small amount of our fuel coming through from Russia, and of course the wheat crisis, which will affect, of course, manufacturer, there is a real impact for us all. I think many people just feel they can't do enough, sat unfortunately in their homes.
Look, David, here's a health story that will, which is sad to hear. Hopefully there'll be some inspiration in it. The musician Jools Holland, very, very talented man. The Times, page 15, he's been diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Yes, in fact, he was diagnosed 8 years ago, and he's only spoken about it for the first time. And he had a routine blood test, which is a PSA, which is available to men of a certain age, and had no symptoms whatsoever, and was diagnosed with prostate cancer. As a result of this, he's now backing a big concert at the Royal Albert Hall in June, I think it is, called Raise the Roof, and he's got other celebrities joining in to raise money for Prostate Cancer UK. I mean, it's important for people like Jools Holland to stress the importance, as we do with breast cancer for women. Early testing, there's 52,000 diagnoses a year, which is 14 a day, but 80% of people survive it if it's detected early.
And I think that's the message. You say, well, Jools Holland has this, but he's been living with it for 8 years, and long, may he go on to live with it for many, many years to come. But so that's good to hear. Yeah.
Kate, let's go inside the Daily Mirror. You've chosen this story about the Poundland shop going online.
Look, retail's going through a very interesting involvement, and we know that there's certainly a lot of movement to what we call omni-channel, which is basically the idea of fluidity between stores, which I still feel have a future, and other opportunities to buy, including online. Social media selling's become so prevalent, and it's just really interesting that when we talk about retailers that are doing really well, they're retailers that have niche, that have purpose. We've seen those big middle market brands struggle. Our traditional department stores in the main have struggled, but also the value operators have done really well. And I remember being in a room a few years back when people were talking about the fact that the Poundland operators would never be able to manage to move online because there wasn't enough money in it. And I think this just goes to show we've had a purchase of this Poundland site to actually offer that value operator is certainly something that consumers want. We know we were talking as well about this push from consumers to get businesses to be more authentic and behave better. And I think, whilst also they'll always look for the value in the purse, there's so much more pressure now from consumers to get the right action from businesses, and rightly so. I'm pleased that that's happening.
Now, here's this next story comes under the category of can you believe it or not? But here we go. David Wooding in The Star, page 7. Again, you've chosen a singer and musician in the form of the amazing Mr. Elvis Costello, who's got a rather distinctive voice, and he credits it to what?
Gargling with washing up liquid. No.
With mild green fairy liquid.
You've been gargling with it too, with a voice like that.
Other liquids are available.
He wants to know how to keep his voice. I'm still screaming because I went to watch Liverpool at Wembley on Sunday, so my voice is a bit croaky today.
What a game.
Yeah, it was an amazing game. I wonder whether Roman Abramovic was there. I think he
well,
been
there
watching.
Would be nobody wishing for him to win anyway, would there have been?
No, probably not. But anyway, back to Elvis. So he supped suds to make his voice better, and he said that somebody suggested to him that was the best way, and he doesn't gargle with it neat. He sort of dilutes it and sprays it in the back of his throat.
It tastes horrible.
I mean, I can't believe.
Kind of health warning with this, David. Be responsible.
Yeah. Don't try this at home.
No, you'll have tried it. No, you will have had your mouth washed out with soap.
Oh, I did have my mouth, but it wasn't with fairy liquid. It was with a nasty soap. Yeah.
If I used foul language at home when I was a kid, my mother used to say, "I'll wash your mouth out with carbolic soap." That was always the phrase.
At least you only do it at home.
Here we
Certain people do it at work.
Driven to it. Kate, this one is an interesting one. Indiana Jones 5. Harrison Ford's paid for the cruise bash.
Apparently they wrapped filming on his last appearance as Indiana Jones. And the boss has said, that's it, no wrap party. Now, in filming world, that's pretty important. That crew that have been working, those rigs that have been working hard behind the scenes, they want that big night out. So apparently Harrison put his hand in his own pocket and paid for an elaborate bash in Shoreditch last week, apparently. I'm sure you were invited. Right. I mean, it's all about
Why are we amazed at this?
I'm not amazed at it at all. I think it's just brilliant that he's done it. It's the right thing to do.
I've done it. Lots of times.
And where was my invite?
Well,
yeah. So on that,
when you look at what he would have been paid for that overall, and you're absolutely right, because you can't do it. You can't be it without it's like us here. Could we do this without the magnificent support team that we have around us, just pandering to our every instruction and making us look wonderful here on air?
I can hear
the party you're going to get in the summer.
Oh.
It's going to be incredible. Isabel will be paying for it.
All expenses paid. The thing is, I was going to cover another story about David Lasley, who is a very famous backing singer whose obituaries today, which is a beautiful, poignant tribute to him. But it's very much about this film called 20 Feet from Stardom, about all the musicians in the music industry that actually help make the music, but don't get the fees, don't get the celebration, don't get their flowers shown to them when they're in this world. And I think it's the same sort of thing. If you work in an environment, we all know what goes on behind the scenes because we see it to get you guys, and we know what brilliant anchors you are and front runners. But, there's an amazing team backstage in every environment. And I think you should do the right thing. It's about a team effort. It's not about...
You love that phrase. I love that phrase. You've used that in the previous review.
That's why Kate's a good egg.
Yeah, you talk about do the right thing. I mean, if I ever had a dilemma in life, I always sit and think and say, and I can't see my way out of it, and I go, what is the right thing? You do the right thing.
It's the only compass I can navigate by, and it's all I can teach my kids, really.
That's why you're my friend. That's just why yeah.
And do you know what? It sometimes means, and I know you know this greater than I, a real long route round sometimes, and you don't get the shortcuts and you don't get the quick breaks, and it can be really disheartening. But surely we need that moral compass. Do the right thing. It will
Do
out.
you know, I used to present a TV programme called Do the Right Thing.
Did you? I did not know that.
Never lasted. It was on Channel 5, yeah.
Oh, no, I did know that.
What did you do?
It was Ruth and I and Esther Ransom
Yes.
doing the right thing.
Celebrating people in the community.
Wasn't that long
I remember.
ago, was it?
Yeah. Don't rub it
Fairly
in.
recently. And you would sort of highlight people doing acts in the community and positive things.
But it is, I mean, the reason we came to the title was that was my mantra for life. And I think it's pretty simplified. You know, it is. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just at the end of the day, what is the right thing? And we all know what the right thing is.
Yeah, and, it brings us back to the story we started this whole talk about. I'm sure that's what Zelensky's guided by every day. And the West, hopefully, in our response to what Putin's doing, is asking themselves, what is the right thing to do?
But Isabel, on a week when,
well, we'd all do the right thing if we didn't think he had a nuclear option. That's the only thing that's holding us back. Guys, got to say goodbye to you.
Yes.
So thank you.
David
Thank you both
Thank
very
you
much
so much.
indeed. Because we've got a rugby legend waiting to talk to us now. Well, the former rugby player, Gareth Thomas, is swapping the Six Nations for the Sex Nations. There's a... hang with us, we'll explain this, because what the Sex Nations does, because we've got a couple of weekends still to go with the Six Nations, it brings the UK together to encourage everyone to understand different sexualities. And Mr. Gareth joins us now to tell us all about it. My friend, good morning to you.
Morning, Eamonn. Morning, Isabel.
Good morning.
So listen, my friend, you've done this survey and you go around the different nations involved in the Six Nations. And is there a big difference, or what have you learnt from people's attitudes towards sex?
I learned people's attitudes towards sexuality, towards sexual health of themselves and of other people. Very much varies, because we surveyed 6,000 people. We wanted to keep it on the number of 6, and it revealed the attitudes and the acceptances are very, very different. And I feel that one thing that I found when we did this survey with the Tackle HIV campaign, which I lead with the partnership with Vive Healthcare and Terence Higgins Trust, what I realised is people are more understanding and more knowledgeable about other sexualities or about sexual health. Yeah, when it comes to themselves, they're not proactive in maybe testing themselves. They understand the importance of staying sexually healthy and well, but they're kind of afraid to go and test themselves, which again then creates this understanding that there's a stigma, that there's a misunderstanding around sexual health. For instance, a lot of people felt they didn't need a sexual health check because they didn't fall into a category that would be at risk of maybe, say, HIV, because they were heterosexual. And so many people assume that people who are affected by HIV are only gay, bisexual men, or Black African men, Black African women. And the reality is very different, because even this year, this has been the first time in 10 years that there's been more new infections of HIV in people who are heterosexual than there are of gay or bisexual men. So it's understanding that, so much of what we did with Tackle HIV was based mainly within the UK, but it's understanding it was a great opportunity around the Six Nations to spread that and to realise that, beyond the borders, there's still stigma. Beyond the borders, as well within our own borders, there's a lot of misunderstanding as well.
And you know what? There's so much misunderstanding, perhaps arguably within the sport. I mean, you have played such a unique role in speaking out openly, first of all, as being gay, openly having been diagnosed with HIV so bravely. We've still got a long way to go, though, within the sport. It's very macho, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, I think some people think that when they look at rugby and say, well, Gareth Thomas was able to be open about his sexuality in rugby, so it's okay. Like, I'm one person out of many, many people. So when we look at sport in general, and I think when we realise within sport, as I'm sure Eamonn knows, he loves this sport, sports people are some of, if not the most influential, powerful people in this world. Like, when they talk, when they say things, people listen. Yet when we look at what is it now, we're in 2022, and we can't really sit here and say that we can name like maybe 5, maybe 10 openly gay, male or female, top top sports people play active in this sport right now, in any sport all over the world. And when we talk about equality, if we can't name them, understanding the platform that these people have, if we don't know who they are because they aren't there, then the reality is that within sport, there's still a problem. But because we have, there was myself, we have Tom Daly, we have other people who are very much, one-off, then we feel that sport is in a good place and sport is okay, but it's not. It still needs an injection of equality and an understanding of what equality is.
No, you're absolutely right. It's particularly Premier League football as well, where we just need people to stand up and lead by example. But if that's the downside, Gareth, you were just saying there about 6,000 people polled with this, but you said that you now find those people to be more accepting of the situation and diversities and sexuality, whereas 10 years ago, bet you wouldn't have got that.
Yeah, but you know what? This is the thing, right? Though, but this is, I don't feel what we can do is say, you know what? We're evolving into a better place. I feel like it's very easy because we have to understand, right? For instance, within my life as a guy living with HIV, I take one tablet a day and I live a normal, happy, healthy life. I have a HIV negative husband, and I know by taking my medication that I sexually cannot transmit that disease to him or anybody else. So we can't say, like, medicine has changed. So we can't say, I believe, or we shouldn't be allowed to keep saying, well, from 10 years ago, we've got a bit better. Like, there's no reason why we can't change. There's no reason why we should say that, oh, well, if we're a little bit better now in 10 years, imagine what we'd be like in 20 years. Like, there's no need for discrimination. There's no need for misunderstanding. There's no need for stigma. So I think it's an easy example to say, well, 20 years ago, things were a lot worse than they are now. So things are better now. Things are good now. Things aren't good now. The reality is, I live with HIV. I live openly about my sexuality. And, if I wanted to, I could turn on social media and have to block 50 people a day. I face discrimination about my HIV status, about my sexuality constantly. And I shouldn't have to. I do, but I shouldn't have to. But people think that, do you know what? If it's only twice a week, then 10 years ago, it would have been like 100 times a week. So don't worry about it. We're in a better place.
Do you know what? I think it's a very either stupid or brave person that would ever sort of challenge the likes of you. I mean, big hunk of a man.
Trust me, they're usually stupid, Eamonn.
You would be. And I do have to say, Gareth, when you came out and you spoke, and you impressed me so much. You impressed me so much. And I know in our business, people are much more open about coming up. It seems to be much more acceptable, although there are a lot of people who are quite frightened to do so for whatever reason. But we can imagine the environment is probably a bit different in sport. It's probably a bit different in business, in the business world, or other professions where it maybe might be less acceptable. But I'm shocked and I'm surprised that people would still hurl abuse at a man like you who's a hero, really.
Well, do you know what? But it's because I feel like I've made myself vulnerable, because I think when you speak about something that is maybe something that is a very personal thing to you, but you feel like to have a life that I wanted to have, to be able to walk down the street hand in hand with my husband, I felt I needed to take control of that. But what some people have then is they have the ability to maybe feel like they have a way of hurting you when they don't want to maybe confront you because you're big or scared. So somebody might walk past, and we live in a society. When I say somebody might walk past and be discriminative, doesn't mean they have to shout discriminative words at me. They can look at me in certain ways, and trust me, you can tell a lot about a person's look. They can tut, they can decide to cross. They can decide to cross the road. So we live in a society again where people are evolving in their ways of wanting to be discriminative towards you. And, I do a lot of stuff on TV. Like I work on the rugby last weekend, the Wales-England game, and people decide to have a go at me because of my commentary. But I understand they're not having a go at me because of my commentary. They're having a go at me because they want to find a way of having a go at me about my sexuality, my status around HIV. And that's why, again, I feel it's important, and especially with the Tackle HIV thing, where we got tacklehiv.org, the website, as I want to create a platform where people can go and people can be educated. people can understand the realities.
Well, Gareth, for every single person that trolls you, you must remember that there are so many more who appreciate what you're doing. I have to declare my interest at this point. My husband's a huge Welsh rugby fan, big fan of yours as well. I have to ask you then about the Six Nations before we let you go. Is it going to be France's year?
Well, France have got a real tough run in now. They come to Cardiff on a Friday night. So playing Wales in Cardiff on a Friday night is a really difficult
best stadium in the world, my husband will say.
Another challenge for them. And they've got the crunch. They've still got to play England. So it's the great thing about these Six Nations, France are the best team in the world at the moment, and it's great that we have the best team in the world playing in a tournament on our doorstep, and everyone's out to beat them. So when everyone's out to beat the best team in the world, every team raises their game a certain percentage. So you never know. Watch this space, I'd say.
It's a weekend off this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a Fala weekend this weekend. So I think everybody will go home as well. Everybody will kind of relax, get with their families. All the fans will have a weekend off, kind of, cleansing themselves out. Get rid of all the beer they drank over the last couple of weeks to get ready for the next weekend. So, yeah.
Listen, you mentioned the website there just before we leave. You give us that website if people want to get in touch and get more info.
Yeah, so tacklehiv.org. It's a website where there's factual information. The internet can be a very scary, dangerous place, as I'm sure you both know. So we wanted to create a platform which has got very factual, very positive information and life stories on there.
Good man.
Don't let the trolls get you down. Keep doing what you're doing.
It's a great...
And you too. Thank you, GBNews. The future.
Trolls, you know nothing about it. You should sit here. You'll know about trolls.
We should have a catch-up about that.
Thanks, mate. The Six Nations in the middle of the Six Nations. Gareth Thomas there. Great man.
OK, we're going to turn our attention now to the huge surge in demand for army equipment here in the UK. It's being sold to people who either want to send equipment to Ukraine or go and fight there themselves.
So wait a minute, what are you talking about? You're talking about people sending rucksacks or boots or...
bulletproof vests to loved ones in Ukraine, wherever it might be. Let's find out, shall we? Rosie Wright is at one such store where they are sending this equipment. Good morning to you, Rosie. Tell us more.
A very good morning to both of you from Frontline Army Surplus in Southampton, a store which just over a week ago, the clientele might have been parents trying to get their kids kitted out to look like maybe their parents in the military. Teenagers going on camping trips. All of that changes a week ago. The demand in this store has been extraordinary and people want kit now like this instead, not for a camping trip, but instead to go to a war zone. And this store, like many others that I've spoken to this week, have said anything bulletproof to customers ringing, we haven't got it. Anything that might protect you from shrapnel, we're sold out. We can find out quite a lot more now. I'm speaking to Chris Smith, who's the co-owner of this store. Just explain to me what happens this time exactly last week. Suddenly there's a surge in demand.
Yeah. Well, it started off last week, people coming in jokingly to start with that I need to get stuff to Ukraine. But as the week went on, they became more and more serious, and it was actually genuine people from all walks of life wanting to go and do the bit and help out, to go and stop what they've seen on the TV and the newsreels. They just couldn't watch it anymore. So they were decking themselves out to do stuff when they went over there.
What kind of kit even is available? I mean, you said a helmet like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Mark 6 helmet. The British Army is on now what they call Vertus helmet. This is 2 generations ago. This will stop like shrapnel and things like that, but will be protective. But I have none of these. This is the last one I have left. And usually I wouldn't even sell one of these every 2 months, but they've just flown out and you can't get them anywhere. There's just none left.
What kind of conversations do you have with people when they come in here? Do they look ready, equipped? I mean, the UK government, Ben Wallace has made it really clear that is against government advice. If you're going to go, you at least have got to have some kind of military experience.
That's the unfortunate thing. There is some individuals who are really wanting to help, but they don't have the experience and knowledge to do something, but they're still going out there. So I'm not sure if they'd be more of a hindrance than a help. Their heart's in the right place, but their experience isn't, so they might be more of a hindrance. Whereas you have others who are ex-military, who are going out there with expertise, with training, that would be of benefit to them.
And the reality is now, you said there was a bit of a peak on Tuesday, beginning with those people really seriously going to go. The people coming, can you even get the right kit now to make sure you be safe enough when you get there?
To be honest, it's very limited what you can get hold of, and it's very limited of what we're allowed to sell in this country when it comes to protective equipment. The the weapons that they're using out there, we don't have the protective legally allowed to sell to stop what they're getting thrown at them. So it's a matter of getting it legally, if at all, in the first place.
Chris, thank you very much for speaking to us. And this has been the narrative that's been the same of many stores selling surplus equipment, that suddenly they have just had such a surge in people saying, we want the kit, we need it now, and we're prepared to spend a lot of money to get it.
Good. Thanks for keeping us in the picture. People, you now know what to do and what is required. We'll take the break there. After that, speaking to the Security Minister, Damian Hinds, about the ongoing situation in Ukraine right after this. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The first Ukrainian city reportedly falls to the Russians a week after the start of Putin's invasion. We'll be asking the Security Minister what the government is doing.
At the time, nearly 2 minutes past 9, this Thursday, the 3rd of March. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel, right across the whole world on your TV, your radio and online. Leading the news this morning.
The city of Kherson reportedly has fallen to the Russians after a day in which Putin's forces bombed schools, hospitals and homes.
The number of people fleeing Ukraine has now topped 1 million. According to the United Nations, it is the swiftest refugee exodus of the past 100 years.
And over 6,000 people, including children, have been arrested during protests against the war in Russia. And that includes a pensioner who survived the siege of Leningrad.
Remember, you can take part and we will try and reflect what you have to say in any of our discussions. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet at GB News.
Well, we're joined now by Alexander Rodyansky. He is the current advisor to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. A very warm welcome to the programme to you. Look, the West have really seen Zelensky as a bit of a hero in the last week. How much is that an empty sentiment for you? I mean, we can praise him all we like, but at the end of the day, he's in a very, very difficult position, isn't he?
That's right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It is a precarious situation. War is just raging throughout our country. But of course, we are all sort of motivated and just, taken by the bravery of our people and our army. So yes, it is quite heroic what is happening.
Are you in daily contact with the president at all?
So I'm not going to comment on that, but I am in daily contact with the presidential team, of course. I am a presidential advisor. All hands are full. We have to just work beyond the usual schedules. We have to do things that we normally wouldn't do, all of us. So yes, it's a full load.
We have a phrase in English which is cometh the hour, cometh the man. And I see you smiling there. Your boss is the man, isn't he? Your president is the man. There's such respect for him and adulation. And I say this disparagingly, but there wasn't supposed to be. This man was supposed to be an actor, a comedian, a stand-up, a man who won Strictly Come Dancing. And look at him, he's conducted himself with such dignity. People have huge respect for him.
Well, that's right. I mean, never judge a book by its cover. And you also have to live up to the job. And that's what he did. He lived up to the job. He lived up to the task and the challenge ahead of us. And he's doing that every day. So we're fully behind him. The country is completely consolidated behind the president. All the previous differences and disputes have been put aside. He has a above 90% support rating at the moment. So yes, the country is fully consolidated. And in fact, you could say that the Russian side achieved everything it always never wanted to achieve. So it managed to consolidate our people to such an extent as nobody could have ever imagined.
But he has to live with the threat, not only the day-to-day threat of being a citizen of Kiev, for instance, but that the fact that the Russians want him assassinated, they want his scalp. That must be terrible pressure for him to live with.
Well, yes, I mean, it's exactly that. On the other hand, I have to say, I mean, we know what the Russians are capable of. I mean, we were part of the Soviet Union, and we know how to stand our ground. I mean, we're not scared of any Russian. And this is our country. We'll keep defending it. So it is true, they're sending all sorts of special forces. In fact, we know that they have been sending Chechen special forces to execute these sorts of jobs, and we've been successful in completely liquidating them. So this is not going to go anywhere for them.
I just want to know, we're 1 week into this war now. Straight after this interview, we'll be speaking to a minister from the UK government. What is it that you need at the moment? We're seeing that the first city has fallen. The great fear, I suppose, is that it will be the first of many, and the ultimate trophy for Putin will be Kyiv. What more can we do to support you?
That's right. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for all the support the West is giving us, and Britain in particular. I would say we still need maximum support on the military side, arms, equipment, anti-tank, air defense systems in particular, but also, we'd really like to have a no-fly zone over Ukraine. That would really kind of ease the task for us. And make no mistake, one way or the other, NATO and the West will have to engage at some point, right? Whether it's a direct conflict or not. I mean, this is a big problem to stay, right? This regime is a big threat to the whole world. And the sooner you recognize this, the better it is for everyone. That's just what I believe. And so that's what we need on the one hand. On the other hand, we need economic support because we still have our social obligations. We have to pay pensions. So we're also receiving that. So thank you.
How are you feeling, Alexander, with this Pierce movement, this movement coming from south, coming from east, coming from the north of the country as well, this pincer movement, I'm trying to say. Do you feel that it's inevitable that the Russians will eventually break through?
I don't think it's inevitable. At least I don't believe that. So they've had some success with terrible losses on their side in the south. We knew that the south is probably easier for them to proceed. So the first city of Kherson has really fallen to them. But again, there isn't really as much strategic value to Kherson as to some other cities. They've failed miserably so far, way beyond what they would have ever expected in the north, in the biggest cities. So in Kharkiv and Kiev, they're not having any success whatsoever, and they're counting heavy, heavy losses. So I think it's not guaranteed whatsoever that they will actually succeed. But of course, there is a risk. I mean, they do have the bigger army. They do have the upper hand, if you want, in terms of their ultimate military capabilities. They are a nuclear power, and they keep talking about it, actually. Again, that's another reason why you're not going to just be able to sit this out. So I think, no, so far it looks like we are actually winning, if you want, because we're counting the much fewer losses, and we have much higher morale, and this is our country, and they're not having any strategic success so far.
I just want to ask you, United Nations saying 1 million refugees now have fled your country, a tragedy in itself, of course, people having to leave their homes, but of course the impact on the country left behind. We've spoken this morning on the programme to some of those people who've decided to stay. Now, the big fear for them, as President Zelensky has said overnight, is that President Putin is trying to erase Ukraine, that those people will be the collateral damage of this war. Are you advising your citizens to stay, the women, the children, or do you think it would be safer at this stage if they can to get out before President Putin carries out this siege, starve and surrender strategy?
Well, of course, that's a very difficult question. So first of all, we're advising people not to panic as far as possible. We're still securing the cities. We still have food supplies. We still have shelter. We still have, people can still live in the cities, although, of course, it's becoming harder. And we do have curfews, and it's dangerous. So we're not telling, on the one hand, we're not trying to cause too much panic. On the other hand, we do have a full-scale war. So we're not keeping people from leaving, of course. Women with children and the elderly have already left to a large extent and are leaving the big cities. And that's, of course, we're helping them with that. On the other hand, the men have to stay.
Alexander, so much talk and hopefully so much hope attached to peace talks and negotiations, and those negotiations would presumably have to involve concessions on both sides. What is your country prepared to concede?
Nothing in terms of our sovereignty.
Nothing?
In terms of our sovereignty, no. This is our country. It's internationally recognized in its border. This is completely beyond any discussion.
Okay, so nothing as regards sovereignty, but what? Is there anything that's negotiable, do you think?
Look, I mean, ultimately, and this is my position, and I think, most people would agree, we want, in the long run, we want a friendly, peaceful relationship with Russia. The solution to that and the way to achieve this is actually within Russia. We are a democratic country. We've never picked any fights with anybody, and Russia, of course. And the only reason this is happening is because Russia is a repressive, autocratic state with a person at the top who cares only about his imperial ambitions, doesn't care about any lives lost or whatever. And the solution to this war and to solving this crisis lies in that domain. So we're willing to help Russia in that sense, achieve these transitions, achieve these changes that will help find that solution, but we're not willing to compromise on our own sovereignty.
Okay, Alexander Rodniansky, thank you very much indeed for your time, for speaking to us. Mr. Rodniansky is an advisor to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Thank you very much indeed. Stay safe.
Now, across the country, Brits have been donating and raising money for Ukrainians currently sheltering from Russian forces. And one man is currently training hard for an immense 152-mile, 6-day walk across the UK to raise funds for families in eastern Ukraine.
His name's Dan Zenchuk. He was born in Peterborough to Ukrainian parents. And Dan feels a special connection to those experiencing the horrors of war. Let's go to him. Let's find out what he's doing. Marching, Dan, marching. Now, what's the difference between marching, running, jogging, walking? Tell us what marching involves.
Yeah, good morning. So, yeah, as you say, 152-mile walk. I'm completing at the end of this month over the 6 days. This was planned, I think, before we even saw the escalation of the last week or so, because for us Ukrainians, we've seen it coming for a while, before it even hit the news. But there's obviously a lot of anger, a lot of frustration at the moment. I feel right now like I could do this walk twice over, I think. But as you say, we're doing a lot of efforts across the country. I'm part of an appeal team called Support Ukraine UK, and off the back of that, Walk for Ukraine was my personal contribution to help our friends and family back in Ukraine. We're just doing everything we can. What you see on the screen at the moment, this is our community in Peterborough marching and protesting at the weekend. We've got a big aid collection going on at our church, St Olga's Church in Peterborough. We've got a collection for our Support Ukraine UK all over the country through my logistics company, busily gathering aid in to get out to Ukraine. And then my walk is really just a small part of my own personal contribution to this fantastic effort that the Ukrainian community and indeed the British public as well are putting in at the minute to support our country. And, it's very tough times. It's very upsetting and stressful for us all. And, as if I needed any motivation for this walk, certainly Mr. Putin's given me that in the last week. So, the hard training starts, as you say, in the next few days, ready for the end of the month. But I'm just happy to be playing a small part as part of the wider Ukrainian community to do my bit for our people.
And amazing it is. Hats off to you. Listen, Dan, tell us, what will that money buy? You talk about sending aid to Ukraine. What sort of things will that money raised buy, and who will be getting it?
Sure. So it's a mixture of things. We started this appeal a month ago, as I said, and we knew an escalation was likely. So when we started, it was really to support the soldiers in the East and their families, and the volunteer units that were providing aid to them as well. Then as the situation has developed, we're obviously in a position now where we've got kind of two arms to this. You've got our soldiers and their families still need the support, those that have stayed behind in Ukraine, but we've now obviously got a massive refugee situation with those fleeing to Poland and Lithuania. So we've got kind of two arms to it. We are still sending aid straight into Ukraine. We're very lucky to have the contacts there to be able to get aid into Ukraine at the minute when the borders are obviously quite tightly controlled. But we're also sending aid out to the refugees in Poland as well, and to centres there. So we're collecting for the refugees things like baby food, items, blankets, clothing, bathroom items. But we are still managing to get things like rations and medical aid through the border and into Ukraine to support our military as well, and the people that have stayed behind.
Well, you're doing the right thing, my friend. How much are you looking to raise, and how can people contribute?
Sure. So I'll be totally honest. I was a bit pessimistic, but I set myself some quite low targets. I think with Support Ukraine UK, we set up an initial fund of £3,000 target. As of this morning, we're at about £14,000.
Oh, good for you.
For my Walk for Ukraine, I set an initial target of £2,000. I'm currently at 4.5, and
Fantastic.
We're still a month away, 3 weeks away from the walk. But there's two pages on Facebook, so Support Ukraine UK and Walk for Ukraine. So obviously one for my walk, one for the appeal. Both of them have got Just Giving pages and links, so people can donate money if they wish. We've also set up an Amazon wish list, so for people that maybe can't get items to us or not comfortable donating money, they can donate through that, and we'll receive the items that are needed the most.
Good luck to you. You've got your message across. Dan Zenchuk is going to be marching 152 miles for Ukraine. Thanks for your time, and good luck to you, Dan.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you.
All the best to you. Stay with us here on Breakfast. We'll have more for you in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I just reflect what you're saying to us and getting in touch this morning, and the fuel crisis continues to hurt badly, and people are very frightened by the idea of £3,000 fuel bills by the end of the year. John, 73 years of age. Good morning, John. He says, I haven't put on my heating for 2 years. I am off old age pension age. I get £137.60 because I worked all my life, saved and struggled to buy my home, and I can't get any other benefits.
Lots of people getting in touch as well about the Ukraine story that we've been covering this morning. In the 6 o'clock hour, if you were with us then, we spoke to one resident in Kiev. Carol says, that poor Ukrainian lady, I am sobbing and so angry. This shouldn't be happening in 2022.
Yeah. Ian says, without outside help, it doesn't look like the Ukrainian army can stop the Russians. They would argue differently, but he said we could well be in for a prolonged, bloody conflict, no clear winner. I mean, I think that's the thing. The Russians were expecting 15 days to complete the mission, and it may go on for months. Let's go to Damien Hines, MP, Minister of State for Security, Borders. He's a Conservative MP. Damien, good morning. I just wanted to point out to you, but Damien, you didn't think this would happen. You didn't think Putin would actually do this, did you, initially?
Well, I think everyone hoped that it wouldn't happen, but knew that it was a distinct possibility. Only anybody can look inside Vladimir Putin's head. But the situation we have now clearly is desperate for the people of Ukraine. That's why it's so important that we provide assistance, both to Ukraine itself, but also to Poland and the other surrounding countries, and also that we are putting in place a big new humanitarian route, actually 2 new humanitarian routes, to make sure that our country is absolutely playing its part, along with friends and allies elsewhere, to make sure that we welcome and bring to safety people fleeing that conflict.
What form would that take? I mean, when you say 2 humanitarian routes, just outline, explain that to us.
Yeah, so 2, the first is an extended family program. So for people who are here, who have extended family in Ukraine or who have just left. So by extended family, that means, it could be grandparents, siblings, adult children, and so on. They can bring them to this country, and that that alone could it could be a couple of 100,000 people eligible for that. Then we're also bringing in a community sponsorship program. So we even don't have relations, family connection. That a community group here, so that could be a local organisation, a local council, or a church group or something like that, can step up and say, yeah, we'd like to welcome a family to help them settle, to help the children settle into their schooling, to help them navigate the benefit system, to find work, and so on. So the extended family program is imminent. That'll be in place tomorrow. The community sponsorship program takes a little bit longer because obviously there's quite a lot to put in place to make it happen, but we want to do it as soon as possible.
The United Nations saying 1 million refugees have now fled the Ukraine. And I wonder why we're putting an arbitrary number on it. Nicola Sturgeon has said there shouldn't be a limit on the number.
We're not.
OK.
There is no arbitrary number.
OK, so there's an unlimited...
So the couple of 100,000 I mentioned, that's an estimate. Because obviously the British government doesn't have records, doesn't keep records of how many, siblings or adult children people may have in another country. And then the community sponsorship programme, the only cap on that effectively is the community sponsors, and I think people will come forward and will want to do that. So, as I say, they're both big programmes.
Yeah, Minister. Many people may say, why don't you just adopt the same approach as the Scottish government on this one? Just let people in first, ask questions later.
Well, look, we want to make it as smooth as possible. People have been through terrible trauma already. I mean, this is mostly, not entirely, but mostly this is, mothers and children and single lone females, because men aged 18 to 60 are remaining in country. They have been through the most horrific times. We want to make it as straightforward as possible. But we need to have biometric checks on people, not because of those people, but because of others who, sad truth is there will always be people who seek to take advantage of a situation like this, and we need to know who's coming into the country, who might be, of course, Russians rather than Ukrainians.
I want to ask you about Roman Abramovich. Some reports this morning suggesting that his flight records show that he travelled to Moscow via the Belarusian border, that he might be involved in some capacity in the first round of the peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. If that does prove to be the case, do you think the UK government might take a different strategy in terms of sanctioning him individually?
So, look, you'll have to forgive me. I can't and won't talk about individual cases of who may or may not be sanctioned unless and until that happens. And that's for good reason. I don't think it's right to give people prior warning of their individual status. But we have sanctioned individuals already, as well as banks, organisations, and others. And by the way, we'd already sanctioned many people over what happened in 2014, and for human rights outrages and for anti-corruption is already before this further invasion of Ukraine. Now we have sanctioned more people now, and there will be more to come. We've always been clear it's a ratchet approach. There will be more to come, but you'll have to forgive me that I can't and won't comment on individuals unless and until that becomes the reality about them.
Well, Minister, we'll leave it there. We've got to go. We've reached the end of our programme. Thank you for squeezing us in.
Thank you for having me.
Bringing us up to date. Not at all. Damien Hinds is the Minister of State for Security and Borders. He's also a Conservative MP. Just got to say thank you, everybody, for watching us from 9 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, Tom Harwood up next. I'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGibbon. A dull and damp start for most of us. Frost-free, however, with the extensive cloud overnight. And then it does turn a little brighter in some places later this afternoon. But at the moment, there's a weather front crossing the country very slowly because it's coming up against high pressure to the east, and it's a weakening feature. However, it is bringing an extensive area of cloud and outbreaks of rain to Scotland, western parts of England, as well as Wales. Hill fog as well, but that area of cloud and rain narrowing, and so it's less extensive by the afternoon, and that means that parts of eastern England will brighten up. Plenty of sunshine here, highs of 10 to 13 Celsius. Where it's raining across central parts of the country, 9 or 10 degrees. But by the end of the afternoon, West Wales, Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Southwest England also sees brighter skies developing to the rear of the front, and a few showers starting to arrive. Most of those showers stay offshore overnight and inland, I think, for Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest under clear skies. A touch of frost is possible, also for East Anglia. But away from those areas, we keep the cloud, we keep those outbreaks of rain going, very slowly edging east, so that it's eastern Scotland, northeast England, into the Midlands and the southeast where we'll see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain during Friday morning. The rain tending to be on and off, but it will be fairly persistent for eastern Scotland, northeast England, and it will be falling as snow over the tops of the Grampians. Brighter weather, meanwhile, for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, western England. Temperatures typically up at 9 or 10 degrees in the south, 7 to 8 degrees further north. Those temperatures head slightly downwards during Saturday and Sunday, but at the same time, most places will see the weather turn drier and brighter, albeit with just 1 or 2 showers.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun.